In a world ravaged by colossal monsters, unpredictable disasters, and villains capable of reducing entire cities to dust, humanity found a thin line of hope in the Hero Association, an organization that brings together extraordinary warriors to face these threats. Each hero carries unique powers. Some manipulate the mind, others control the elements, and there are even fighters who push the limits of flesh and spirit. The greater the feat, the higher the rank in the class hierarchy. From C to S, where only the most feared and legendary survive. But amid all this spectacle of strength, someone emerges who defies all logic. Saitama, an ordinary man who, after training to the point of exhaustion, achieved the ultimate power, defeating any enemy with a single punch. His strength is so absolute that no opponent exists who can match him. The problem is that in a world where everyone seeks power and glory, he lives trapped in a paradox. Being invincible also means facing the boredom of never finding a real challenge. One Punch Man is not just about epic battles between heroes and monsters. It is about the irony of a universe that venerates the struggle for survival, yet quietly shelters a man who could end any war before it even began. A hero without fame, yet he carries alone the weight of being the strongest of them all. That is why in this video we are going to go through the mega recap of One Punch Man, the story of Saitama and his universe. If you enjoy anime recaps, this is the right channel, specialized in summaries. So subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a like and a comment to help boost the video even more and help this series reach more people. And if you can give the video a boost, that would help a lot. So let's get into the mega recap. The story begins in the middle of the chaos of a massive explosion shaking the city, an act of destruction carried out by a bluish monster. The Hero Association mobilizes some of its members to contain it, but they are quickly overwhelmed by the villain, who continues to spread destruction. Watching everything on television, the protagonist, Saitama, realizes that his time to intervene has come. Shortly after, the monster approaches a little girl crying for her parents. At the moment it prepares to attack her, it is surprised to see the child saved by an extremely fast figure, and it demands to know his identity. The newcomer responds that he is just a guy who's a hero for fun. The villain, Vaccine Man, finds the answer amusing and begins to explain his origins, revealing that he was born from the pollution generated by humanity on the planet. With a declared hatred, Vaccine Man undergoes a transformation as he announces his plan to eradicate the human race. The protagonist, however, paying no attention to the speech, readies himself and defeats him with a single punch. The easy victory leaves him frustrated. It was just another opponent who couldn't withstand a single blow. The scene then takes us 3 years into the past, where Saitama with hair faces Crablante, a kaijin with the appearance of a crab. Crablante questions him about whether he wants to die, since he shows no fear and makes no attempt to flee. The young man explains that after failing to get a job, he no longer cares about anything and has no inclination to run from a monster. Crablante, noticing Saitama's lifeless eyes, similar to his own, decides to spare him. He mentions that in any case, he was looking for someone else, a boy with a cleft chin. Further along, Saitama crosses paths with the boy the kaijin was looking for, and, concerned, asks whether he did something to a crab monster. The boy admits that he drew nipples on Crablante while he was sleeping, which heightens Saitama's worry. Even so, he decides it's not his problem and chooses not to get involved. Suddenly, Crablante appears and tries to attack the child, forcing the young man to leap in to save him. The kaijin asks why he is defending him, and Saitama confronts him about his intention to kill a child. The monster responds that he has already killed several people who mocked his appearance, and, furious, describes what the boy did to him, frustrating himself by confessing that his claws prevent him from cleaning himself. Upon hearing this, the young man cannot hold back his laughter, which leads Crablante to strike him with a powerful blow. The monster turns to finish off the boy, but is interrupted by a rock to the face. Saitama, who threw it, reveals that his childhood dream was to be a hero capable of defeating villains with a single punch, and he prepares to fight. Crablante attacks him and, believing he has won, Saitama tears out one of his eyes, killing him instantly. Back in the present, Saitama reflects on how, from that day on, he trained so intensely that he lost his hair, but in exchange became the invincible hero he always dreamed of being. Despite this, he confesses to feeling an emptiness. While trying to pay for his groceries, another villain appears. This one explains that his goal was to become the strongest man in the world, and, having failed, he resorted to the steroid Biceps Buster, a creation of his scientist brother. Trusting his brother, he accepted the gift and transformed into a giant. Now the scientist believes that his intelligence, combined with his brother's strength, will allow them to conquer the world. While the giant destroys the city, the scientist instructs him to advance to the next one. Blinded by power, they fail to notice Saitama sitting on the giant's shoulder. The scientist orders his brother to kill the intruder, but in a clumsy move, the giant accidentally kills his own brother, which drives him to madness. He attacks Saitama, blaming him for what happened, and after a series of attacks, begins to cry over his brother's death. Suddenly, he is startled to see Saitama approaching without a scratch. At high speed, Saitama delivers a fatal punch to the monster's face, and he collapses on top of City B. That night, Saitama laments, feeling that his efforts are meaningless, as the world remains full of evil. He confesses, however, that this is not what saddens him. What truly troubles him is his inability to feel any emotion throughout the day, leading him to question whether he traded his humanity for power. At that moment, a new villain appears, introducing himself as Super Custom Yo649Z MK2. Upon seeing him, Saitama recalls that in the past he felt various emotions when fighting. The villain mocks him but is easily defeated with a single blow. The hero returns home, narrating his day and telling us that being a superhero is just a hobby. The next day, Saitama is awakened by the destruction of his house. A villain was clearly looking for him. Since the attack managed to hurt him, Saitama asks who they are. The villain responds that they are the true humans, those called the Subterraneans. The monster declares that his people plan to reclaim the surface, and to do so they must eliminate the human race. He states that they have already completed 70% of their objective, and says he is surprised that Saitama is the first to resist one of their blows. Saitama is energized by the prospect of a strong rival, and, after dodging an attack, counters, but, as always, defeats him with just one punch. He then begins to eliminate the rest of the army rapidly. After an epic battle, Saitama declares himself the hero protecting the surface. The remaining Subterraneans ignore him and advance, but share the same fate. Saitama rejoices at finally feeling the excitement of combat again and is elated when the leader of the monsters, the Subterranean King, appears at the scene. In the final shot, we discover that it was all just a dream. In reality, he is indeed attacked by Subterraneans, but they are extremely weak and upon seeing him, decide to surrender without a fight. The situation leads him to reflect that perhaps he is in fact the strongest man in the world. The following morning, Saitama tries to enjoy his breakfast in front of the television, which is reporting on a massive mosquito outbreak in the city. Busy watering his plants, he does not hear the recommendation to stay away from the swarm if encountered. While tending his garden, a lone mosquito begins to bother him, and no matter how much power Saitama uses, he finds himself unable to hit the tiny insect. Elsewhere in the city, a threat level of Ogre is declared. The scene introduces a cyborg, Genos, who has just located his target. Meanwhile, a thief takes advantage of the panic caused by the mosquitoes to act, considering the fleeing population's reaction to be stupid. His arrogance is punished when the swarm reaches him and kills him brutally. We discover that the swarm is led by a female creature, the mosquito girl, who feeds on blood. While she complains that the amount of blood collected is insufficient, the cyborg from before attacks her. She laughs at her opponent and orders her mosquitoes to find more food. To her surprise, the cyborg incinerates all the insects around him with his incineration cannons. He launches a new attack in an attempt to eliminate her, but fails, setting off a fierce battle. Genos tries to incinerate her again, but discovers that Mosquito Girl possesses incredible agility to dodge his blasts. What surprises him most, however, is when she manages to tear off one of his arms. The villain threatens him, saying that his legs will be next, but suddenly realizes that the cyborg managed to cut her feet, forcing her to retreat into the forest in search of animal blood. Shortly after, Genos locates her and finds her at the center of an even larger swarm, deciding he needs to finish her quickly. The tension is broken by a cry from Saitama, who appears running while still chasing the same mosquito as before. The cyborg wonders who that man is and advises him to evacuate, warning that the swarm is intelligent and could attack him. Concerned, Saitama responds that in that case he is the one who should leave. Mosquito Girl, however, has no intention of letting them escape and unleashes the full power of her mosquito swarm against him. Genos seizes the opportunity since she has concentrated all the insects in one place and incinerates them completely. He reveals that he had verified the area was clear of human life since detecting the threat, which allowed him to fight without restriction. Suddenly he remembers Saitama and grows worried, but the hero appears behind him unharmed, thanking him for the incredible show. Both are shocked to see that the villain survived and has undergone a transformation. She declares that she no longer needs the swarm and reveals her new power, leaving the cyborg stunned. In a swift move, she advances on Genos and manages to slice through his torso. Genos tries to counterattack, but she dodges and launches him into the air, where she strikes him repeatedly. Defeated, he resigns himself to the situation and decides to activate his self-destruct core as a last resort to ensure victory. However, before he can do so, Saitama intervenes and defeats Mosquito Girl with a single slap, leaving Genos completely speechless. Seeing the hero walk away, Genos pleads to know his name. He then asks to become his disciple, a proposal that catches Saitama off guard. The next day, Genos goes to Saitama's apartment. After introducing himself, Saitama invites him in for tea, intending to inform him that he is not looking for a disciple. He is surprised to see that the cyborg has no injuries, and Genos explains that being a cyborg, his repairs are rapid. He then asks what kind of mechanical parts Saitama uses, to which Saitama replies that he uses none. Genos is baffled, as he believed Saitama's skin was some kind of armor, and wonders why someone so young would be bald. Saitama gets irritated, thinking he is being mocked. Faced with Genos' insistence on becoming his disciple, Saitama says he has no interest in his life story. Genos ignores him and begins to recount that 4 years earlier, he was a normal human until a rogue cyborg attacked his village, destroying everything. As the sole survivor, on his last breath, he was found by Dr. Kuseno, who was searching for a way to stop the cyborg. Genos seized the chance and asked the doctor to perform a modification operation, being reborn as a hero of justice. As he continues with his lengthy story, Saitama's patience runs out since the subject holds no interest for him. Feeling like he is going to die of boredom from Genos' endless monologue, Saitama interrupts him with a shout, demanding that he summarize the entire story. Elsewhere, a scientist is informed about Mosquito Girl's death and mourns the failure of the experiment. However, upon observing Saitama through a monitor, he decides he needs to study that body, even if he has to take it by force. He orders his servant to send an invitation for Saitama to come to the House of Evolution. Back at the apartment, Genos finally finishes his story and asks Saitama how he can become as strong as him. Saitama reveals that his training is extremely difficult and asks whether he is sure he wants to be his disciple. Genos accepts. At that very moment, he informs Saitama that an enemy is approaching. The monster that arrives barely manages to introduce itself before Saitama defeats it with a punch to the face. Genos warns him that there are 2 more enemies outside and offers to take care of them. But before he can move, he realizes that Saitama has already defeated them and is now scolding them for breaking his ceiling. Unexpectedly, something pulls Saitama underground, and a cyborg emerges to attack Genos, though Saitama is the real target. Then 2 more villains surround Saitama, who remains trapped in the hole. Meanwhile, Genos faces the other cyborg, who reveals that the House of Evolution is looking for Saitama, but that he, having no connection to the matter, must be eliminated. Underground, Saitama confronts his enemies, Beast King and Ground Dragon, with a completely neutral expression, which irritates them. Beast King threatens him, and Saitama decides to climb out of the hole, declaring the game is over and demanding they apologize for damaging his ceiling. They refuse and instead attempt to attack him. Saitama, with no effort whatsoever, dodges their blows and with a single sequence of attacks, defeats Beast King. The mole, terrified, tries to flee but is reached instantly by Saitama. Meanwhile, Genos corners the cyborg known as Armored Gorilla, pressing him to reveal information about his boss. The gorilla, fearing for his life, decides to cooperate. He recounts the story of a brilliant scientist whose contributions to the world were invaluable, thanks to his unparalleled intellect. Over time, however, he lost faith in humanity. Although everyone praised him for his genius, no one supported his fundamental beliefs. His interest was not in humans as they were, but in his singular dream, the artificial advancement of human evolution. Others considered this idea dangerous and paid it no mind. The scientist complained that no one understood that humanity's evolution had always depended on taking risks. Furious, he decided to conduct his research alone, an endeavor that consumed more than half of his life, until he finally obtained results. His first action was to restore his own youth. Then he cloned himself and named his facility the House of Evolution, where with the help of his clones, he began experimenting on animals. In this way, he managed to create new species before advancing to human testing. The lengthy explanation is interrupted by Saitama, who, bored with the speech, asks directly what they want from him. Genos backs his master and demands that the gorilla summarize the story in 20 words. Under pressure, the gorilla reveals that his boss is interested in Saitama's body. The protagonist reacts poorly to the idea, but Genos clarifies that it is not what he is thinking. The scientist wishes to use his body for research into his evolution. Genos then recommends that they take the fight to the enemy because otherwise they will never be left in peace. Saitama agrees to leave immediately, explaining that the following day he will be busy. The decision surprises Genos, who before leaving approaches the gorilla and asks whether the House of Evolution created other cyborgs responsible for the destruction of a town. He responds that as far as he knows, he is the only cyborg created by his boss. Elsewhere, the scientist reacts with surprise upon learning that his squad has been wiped out, and worse, that the people responsible are on their way to his base. He fears that if they arrive, all of his research will be destroyed. Determined, he decides to play his trump card and orders his clones to release Carnage Kabuto, a decision that causes an uproar among them. He also requests that traps be set from the 1st to the 8th floor, hoping they can stop the heroes. Finally, Saitama and Genos arrive at the location provided by the gorilla. While Saitama begins counting the floors of the tower, Genos uses his power, the incineration blaster, to destroy the entire building with a single devastating blast. Surprised, Saitama asks why he did that, and Genos replies that he simply opted for the most efficient approach. They then locate the entrance to a basement, where a clone of the scientist tries to release Carnage Kabuto and ends up being killed by the creature. The head scientist approaches and complains that Carnage Kabuto is killing too many of his clones, but the creature retorts that it is irritated at having been locked in a basement, since it is the strongest of all the creations. The scientist justifies himself, explaining that he did it because the creature is psychologically unstable and therefore uncontrollable. Carnage Kabuto laughs at the idea of being controlled and declares itself the next step in the evolution the scientist so desperately seeks, which is why its brain and body are not on the same level as the others. Dr. Genos ignores the taunts as he needs to ask it a favor to capture a sample of Saitama. In the meantime, Saitama and Genos continue advancing through the basement, which seems enormous to them. Suddenly, Genos detects 2 life signals approaching at high speed. It is Dr. Genos, carried by Carnage Kabuto, who is ready to kill. Saitama is surprised to see Genos defeated with a single blow, and then decides to accompany Carnage Kabuto to the battle room. Upon arriving, the monster declares that it wants to test their strength and announces that it is time for the slaughter. Unexpectedly, it is struck by one of Genos' attacks. Genos, extremely angry, is determined to kill it. However, after a series of attacks, Genos realizes he is causing no damage at all. On the contrary, it is he who ends up gravely injured, as his enemy's body is incredibly resistant. Although Saitama had advised him to take it easy, he ignored him and ended up being damaged by his own attack. Carnage Kabuto redirects the energy of the blow back, laughing at the situation, which excites Saitama, who sees in it a good challenge. The scene shows a badly injured Dr. Genos recalling the moment he conceived the idea of accelerating evolution to create a new world composed solely of the next stage of humanity, a goal for which he needs Saitama. Moved, he turns to watch his creation fight what he believes to be a simple human, certain that victory is his. Meanwhile, Saitama approaches the monster and asks it not to disappoint him, as he knows it is the lab's finest weapon. Carnage Kabuto then decides to use its speed to try to attack Saitama from behind, but it is discovered. At that instant, it is seized by an overwhelming terror, feeling that if it attacked, it would die. Carnage Kabuto observes him, unable to understand why its instincts are so alarmed, since its rival appears completely open to receiving blows. Keeping its distance, it asks Saitama how he managed to become so strong. Seeing that everyone, including the scientist, Dr. Genos, is curious, Saitama asks them to pay attention. The protagonist states that the first thing is to maintain a training regimen. He continues, saying that one must never give up, no matter how difficult it gets, and reveals that it took him approximately 3 years to become stronger. To do this, one must do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and run 10 kilometers every single day, while also ensuring a good diet. Recalling his journey, he adds that one should avoid using a heater or air conditioner to strengthen the mind, and that no matter how tempted one is to skip a day, one must give everything. He confesses that he only began to see results after a year and a half, when he went completely bald but became very strong. The only way to be powerful, he concludes, is to train until your hair falls out, something that science could not replicate, because humanity's greatest strength is the capacity to change itself. The revelation leaves everyone stunned. Then Genos scolds him, accusing him of mocking them, since he had just described a common workout. Very angry, he declares that he wants to become stronger and cannot believe that such a simple regimen could generate that much power. Saitama apologizes for disappointing him but insists that is all he has to say. Furious that Saitama has not told him his real secret, Carnage Kabuto activates its Asura mode and begins to lose control. Despite its death threats and its claim that its killer instincts have taken over, Saitama does not seem to care about its words. Carnage Kabuto then begins to pummel Saitama repeatedly, hurling him through the air from side to side. The hero merely reflects that he made a mistake in letting the monster run wild for so long. When thinking about the length of the fight, he realizes they are fighting on a Saturday, which means it is sale day at the supermarket. This realization infuriates him. With a single punch, he delivers a blow that effortlessly shatters the monster, to the great shock of Genos, who wonders what kind of man Saitama is. Shortly after, Genos tells his master that he still has time to make it to the store, and the protagonist, very happy, begins running at high speed so as not to miss the sales. In a new scene, a person is shown to be very irritated at having to pay for food and suggests that it should be shared, arguing that the rich get fat while the poor simply die, a reality that denies everyone their freedom. This man, Hammerhead, announces to the public that they will create a new society and that, although it may seem like a utopia, it will become reality because his gang, called the Paradisers, and he personally, as their leader, will make it happen. Suddenly, he notices that no one is paying attention to his speech, which completely infuriates him. Hammerhead orders his team to destroy the house of the richest man in the city, an individual named Zeniru. When they arrive at his building, they destroy it with a single blow, causing chaos across the city. Seeing the destruction, Hammerhead expresses his pride in the next generation battle suits they stole from an organization. His happiness, however, disappears when one of his followers informs him that they knocked down the wrong building. Faced with the mistake, he tells his followers that now, finally, they will head to Zeniru's real home. In his apartment, Saitama wakes up startled from a nightmare. He gets up and sees on the news a report about an attack on City F by a terrorist group. The information details that the leader of the Paradisers is a minor league delinquent involved in violent crimes. The television presenter reveals the motives behind the attack, which seem ridiculous to Saitama. Just when he thought his intervention would not be necessary, he hears something troubling. All the terrorists are bald. Upon seeing the photo of the criminals, Saitama realizes they look identical to him and therefore rushes out to find them. If they continue committing crimes, he fears people will think he is part of the gang. The scene shifts to a group of frightened police officers as the bald men approach. Suddenly, the bicycle hero of justice known as Moomin Rider challenges them to the delight of the people. However, Hammerhead defeats him with ease, leaving him gravely injured. Meanwhile, in a building, Zeniru is informed that he should flee, but he refuses, stating that it would damage his image. The hero he hired interrupts him, saying that he is lucky since the incident occurred before the end of his contract. Zeniru is glad to see Speedo-san Sonic and asks him to deal with the terrorists. The ninja demonstrates his great speed and says that is exactly what he intends to do, and that Zeniru should worry about the criminals' lives since they will have to think about what to do with their corpses. Shortly after, the Paradiser gang approaches Zeniru's building, known as the Golden Turd. Trying to pass through the forest that separates them from their target, they come face to face with Sonic, who tells them he was waiting for them. Sonic threatens them, stating that he will not let anyone leave alive. but offers them the chance to surrender. Hammerhead refuses and sends his men against the ninja, who defeats them easily, cutting them all down with his sword. Watching his companions fall, Hammerhead realizes he has made a mistake, which enrages him and leads to a great uproar. Sonic, for his part, dodges the rocks Hammerhead throws at him, and is amused to notice that his opponent is an idiot, since he easily spotted the trap. He decides to engage and attacks head-on at high speed. Hammerhead is worried about not being able to see him, and changes strategy, trying to strike him with a tree. However, while he was making a speech about his ideals, Sonic used the moment to position himself behind him and defeated him. Just when he believed it was all over, he reports the situation to his boss, until he realizes that his opponent's body has disappeared. Hammerhead, for his part, runs in desperation, grateful for having a skull thicker than average. Suddenly, he sees a bald man walking through the forest and decides to intimidate him. The scene changes, and we observe Genos complaining to Dr. Kuseno about underestimating his opponents. Dr. Kuseno confesses that he is simply glad that Genos is alright regardless. Genos interrupts him to tell him that Saitama saved his life, just as he himself once did, so that he can now rebuild him. The doctor says that Saitama appears to be a genius, and then tells him that he is building new parts with which he believes he may be able to surpass him, which pleasantly surprises Genos. Meanwhile, Saitama hears Hammerhead ask him whether he wants to join the Paradisers. The protagonist responds that he does not, and confesses that he is a hero who came to beat them up for personal reasons. Hammerhead, upon hearing this, becomes very angry and launches a direct attack at him, which does nothing. Saitama confesses that he is disappointed. He reveals he was expecting more from the battlesuits and then mocks him. Hammerhead decides to test the suit at maximum power, taking advantage of the fact that Saitama is strong. But when he unleashes a super attack, it reminds the protagonist of something he did as a child, and he subsequently stops it very easily. Saitama delivers a blow that destroys the suit, causing Hammerhead to feel great fear and beg for his life. Seeing this, Saitama is reminded of his younger self and lets him go. While trying to make his way back home, Saitama is intercepted by Speedo Sound Sonic, who questions him about Hammerhead's whereabouts. Saitama indicates the direction the other one went, and shortly after, blocks one of the ninja's surprise attacks with his hand. The protagonist states he is confused, since he is not part of the terrorist gang, and realizing Sonic does not believe him, tries to explain the situation again. The ninja, however, seeing his shaved head, is convinced he is not mistaken. When Saitama begins to introduce himself, Sonic cuts him off, saying he does not know him. The indifference disappoints Saitama, who then notices the change in his rival's expression. Sonic is visibly excited to have found someone capable of blocking his attacks. He confesses that he has been perfecting his techniques in the ninja village since childhood, and that by blocking his blows, Saitama has committed an unforgivable act. His pride, says Sonic, will not allow him to let him escape. Saitama responds that Sonic is lying, since he noticed that the ninja simply wants to test his skills against him. Sonic begins to move at high speed, believing Saitama cannot keep up with him, but is shocked to find he is wrong. In a moment of carelessness, Sonic advances directly into Saitama's fist, receiving a blow to his groin. Saitama apologizes for what happened, explaining he had no intention of hitting him there. It was Sonic himself who lunged into him. After a moment to catch his breath, Sonic formally introduces himself to Saitama and announces his withdrawal, declaring that he needs to train now that he has found a worthy rival. For that reason, he demands to know his name. Saitama responds and watches as Sonic gives everything he has just to stay on his feet while threatening him. That night, Saitama mentions what happened to Genos, who offers to eliminate Sonic if he wishes. Saitama declines, saying it is not necessary, and then kicks him out of his house, saying they are not friends. Genos insists that he needs to become stronger, but Saitama tells him to be quiet, confessing he is stressed over a problem he had not thought about before. The cyborg grows concerned and wants to know what is troubling his master. Saitama, visibly worried, reveals that the problem is that nobody knows who he is. It has been 3 years since he began working as a hero, and no matter how many villains he has defeated, more than anyone else, there is not a single person who recognizes him, which is what he had hoped for. He wonders why he has no fans, and is irritated at having been mistaken for a terrorist. Upon hearing him, Genos agrees, recalling that after the defeat of the terrorists, all the credit went to Mumen Rider. He then asks Saitama whether he is registered in the National Hero Registry, something Saitama did not even know existed. Forced to look it up online, he discovers the registry exists and that Genos is not registered either. Saitama then proposes that they register together in exchange for accepting Genos as his disciple. The scene shifts and we see Hammerhead nearly being killed by the organization from which he stole the suits. However, thanks to his extraordinarily hard skull, he survives once again and now promises to work for them. Meanwhile, Saitama fills out the form to become an official hero while watching television, reflecting that he is not so different from the members of the Paradiser gang. If he had taken one wrong step, he might have ended up like them. The following week, we are taken to the Hero Association, where the directors discuss the various registered heroes and plan the next certification exam. A total of 11,684 people will participate, distributed across 6 facilities, representing a 22% increase from the previous year. Despite the growing number of candidates, one director suggests there is no reason to celebrate, as the quality of superheroes has been declining. He proposes that they be more strict in accepting new members. We then discover that everyone is awaiting confirmation of Genos' participation in the exam. The next scene shows all the candidates lining up to enter the exam facility. Saitama's physical appearance draws attention and generates laughter among the others. However, astonishment overtakes everyone when they see him surpassing every physical test with recorded superhuman strength, setting new records and excelling at everything. Faced with such a display of ability, many decide to drop out of the exam. Later in the locker room, Saitama meets up with Genos. After finishing the tests, Genos comments that he considered both the written and physical exams a waste of time, and Saitama agrees, finding both far too easy for a superhero assessment. The cyborg mentions that a score of 70 is enough to pass and confesses he finds it hard to imagine not getting a perfect score. After an hour, the results are announced. Genos receives a perfect score and informs Saitama that he has been placed directly into the S-class, though he does not understand what it means. Saitama, upon hearing this, prepares to check his own ranking, confident he will also be in S-class. Before doing so, Genos asks him about the interview he had. They asked him about his previous mission at the House of Evolution, which was completely destroyed, and suspected he was responsible. He confessed that yes, it was him. He then discovers that Saitama was not interviewed and assumes the evaluators felt it was unnecessary. Finally, Saitama checks his ranking and discovers that he only reached C-class with a score of 71. Very irritated, Genos argues that there must have been an error and proposes speaking with those responsible, but Saitama refuses, not wanting to be further humiliated. Then an announcement over the speakers informs all those who passed that they must attend a seminar. The scene briefly shifts to a person named Amai Mask being informed about Genos' placement in S-class. Afterwards, Saitama and Genos arrive at Hall 3, where they are welcomed and instructed to raise their standards so as not to embarrass the organization, since their faces will appear on the association's page, making them known worldwide. To conclude his speech, the hero who welcomed them demonstrates a bit of his power with his snake fighting style, asking them to follow his example. However, neither Saitama nor Genos pays any attention to what he says. Later, on the way home, Genos tells Saitama about the origin and establishment of superheroes over time, and while he is pleased by the arrival of 2 new heroes, Saitama confesses that he was bored at the seminar. Upon hearing this, Genos declares that he is now officially his disciple, an assertion that leaves the protagonist speechless. The scene shifts to the hero who welcomed them at the association, who complains about the duo's attitude and believes they will not last long. However, the bespectacled team member corrects him, explaining that Genos received a perfect score and is therefore a superstar rookie in S-class. Furthermore, Saitama, though he barely passed, broke every record on the physical exam. He suggests that Snek, the hero, show more respect to the newcomers, since one of them surpasses him and the other will soon do the same. At dusk, Saitama reflects on the different rankings he can achieve within the organization. Upon realizing how impressive Genos is, he begins to doubt whether he truly wants to be that kind of hero. Suddenly, Snek approaches and challenges him to a fight, worried about being surpassed in the rankings. However, in his attempted attack, Saitama humiliates him and defeats him with extreme ease. The next day, Genos explains to Saitama the existence of a skills ranking and mentions that Further along, they will be assigned a hero name, which leads them to joke about possible nicknames. Genos adds that there is also a popularity ranking, which piques the protagonist's interest. They then begin Genos' first training session as his disciple. During the fight, Genos displays all of his power, and Saitama is impressed by his movements. But no matter how hard Genos pushes with his maximum incineration blaster, he cannot hit Saitama, who dodges all of his attacks. Irritated, Genos demands that his master fight seriously, until one of them can no longer continue. Saitama grants his request and demonstrates that he could kill him if he wanted to, a move that leaves the cyborg in a state of shock. After training, the two go to eat udon, where Saitama laments his financial situation. Suddenly, they see the announcement of a competition with large prizes and plan to enter. Shortly after, while Genos demonstrates his incredible ability to eat, handsome Kamen Amai Mask approaches him and asks to have a conversation, having heard that he was assigned to S-Class. After the conversation, the cyborg returns to Saitama, who is surprised that the top hero wanted to end his life. Genos clarifies that he is mistaken. Amai Mask merely came to welcome him to the association. Afterward, they decide to head home. Along the way, Saitama complains a little about the treatment he receives as a C-Class hero, but soon states that he does not care, since now they just need to work hard to be better. Meanwhile, Genos reflects on Amai Mask's words, who warned him not to speak ill of the organization. Finally, before they continue, Genos informs Saitama that he wants to train again and heads off. In the next scene, we hear Saitama complaining that Genos has been in his house for 5 days. Genos, for his part, is diligently writing in a notebook the lessons and training regimen of Saitama. Seeing him, the protagonist grows worried, as he does not know what to teach him, which makes him feel guilty as though he is deceiving him. While Saitama ponders what to explain to his disciple, Genos interrupts him to warn that, as a C-Class hero, he must perform a heroic act once a week or be removed from the hero registry. This leaves Saitama very concerned, and he remarks that he has been watching television and has not found any crime. Genos explains that heroes of his class handle minor crimes which do not appear on television. Faced with this, Saitama immediately puts on his costume and rushes out to see who he can save. Genos offers to accompany him, but Saitama refuses, fearing he will take all the credit. Saitama stares at him and delivers some motivational words he improvised on the spot after glancing at a magazine. And although the protagonist did not believe it would work, Genos was very happy with what was said, promising to train for the entire week. Next, Saitama runs throughout the city looking for crimes, but by the time evening comes, he realizes the city is at peace. He decides to risk his registration on the last day remaining. The following day, Saitama is nervous because the city is still peaceful, but is suddenly interrupted by Speedo Sound Sonic, who wants to fight him. Saitama ignores him, saying he is busy, but Sonic insists. Saitama then destroys Sonic's sword with his teeth and threatens to punch him if he does not leave him alone. Shortly after, Saitama is mistaken for a man who has been bothering a woman. The hero Tank Top Tiger approaches and grabs him by his bald head, while people accuse him of running through the city with a scary face. Saitama tries to explain that he is also a hero, but Tank Top Tiger orders him to stop bothering people, gaining the crowd's approval, which deeply irritates Saitama. Suddenly, Sonic strikes the hero and knocks him unconscious as he was getting in the way. Sonic tells Saitama that he is also a pathetic hero, and that therefore all he needs to do is manufacture a reason to make him want to fight. He then launches his exploding shurikens, which Saitama deflects and repels with ease. He realizes that Sonic's intention is to destroy the city and cause an uproar to force him to fight. Seeing that this might count as his heroic work, Saitama strikes him and defeats him very easily. Later, at Hero Association headquarters, there is discussion about how Speedo Sound Sonic was stopped by a C-Class hero. Suddenly, Tatsumaki appears unexpectedly at the location, looking for work, but her request is denied as the agency does not consider there to be a threat of adequate level for S-Class. This greatly enrages Tatsumaki, who demands to be told whether they have found someone stronger, since she considers herself the best option. Afterward, we observe a meeting of the association's directors to review the state of the cities. There, they discuss the reports of each hero assigned to their respective city. The directors conclude that they must try to detect villain appearances earlier to prevent massive damage. They then question themselves about the rumors of the ghost town in City Z, but the bespectacled director tells them not to worry, as City Z has 2 A-class heroes who are quite capable of conducting the investigation in the city properly. The scene transitions to Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball, who are preparing to begin the investigation. They advance cautiously through the city, aware of City Z's reputation as a place where a large concentration of monsters has gathered, forcing its inhabitants to move to the center. Upon finally reaching their destination, Golden Ball questions his companion about why there are so many monsters in this place. Spring Mustachio replies that there are various theories, but he personally believes there is a colony from which the monsters originate. As they approach, Genos detects their presence and grows concerned. The A-class heroes, for their part, believe that solving this mystery will earn them a promotion to a higher rank. Suddenly, a noise behind them puts them on alert, and they decide to look for the source to confirm their theory. The heroes locate the monster and prepare for combat. Golden Ball uses his Golden Bullet attack, but is defeated with ease. Despite Spring Mustachio's efforts with his focused thrusting Streak Tornado, he cannot do much to defeat it. He then decides to request backup from the association and in the meantime tries to buy time. Subsequently, we see that many A-class or higher heroes receive a warning about a tiger-level threat. At the scene, Spring Mustachio is gravely injured, as help has not yet arrived, and he ultimately falls defeated. The monster Kombu Infinity, after defeating him, complains that there are no people screaming so that he can become famous, and so decides to go to a residential area. However, upon trying to leave, he comes across Saitama walking casually and decides to attack him. Saitama, upon seeing him, recalls that he forgot to buy Kombudashi stock, and so defeats the monster to take its parts. Later, we see Saitama cooking when Genos suddenly arrives, asking about all the kombu at the door. Saitama explains what happened, simply saying he found a great deal. Finally, at Association headquarters, they review the investigation of City Z. The report indicates that the A-class heroes managed to escape with their lives, and that the monster disappeared. However, they reported the existence of another very powerful monster living in the city. When reinforcements arrived, they found no evidence of them. Instead, they only saw the remains of the monster that had defeated the other heroes. The scene shifts, and we observe how the rumor about the powerful monster in the area begins to spread, generating fear in both humans and the rest of the monsters. Then, we see how an unknown object orbits around the Earth, which concerns all the planet's authorities, who begin to gather to plan what to do. The scene transitions again, and Genos warns Saitama that he has been summoned by the association and will return later. Upon arriving, Genos meets Bang, who welcomes him and tells him that everyone else has fled from headquarters, leaving the place completely empty, with the two of them being the only heroes who bothered to show up. Generally, when everyone is summoned, it is to deal with a very difficult problem, and so some decide to avoid it. Bang reveals that this time a dragon-level disaster has been declared, against which they have no answer. A meteor is about to collide with City Z in 35 minutes, which will completely destroy it. He recommends that Genos evacuate the city together with all of his loved ones. Concerned, Genos asks whether the citizens know about this. Bang informs him that the disaster will be announced when 30 minutes remain. After hearing the announcement, Genos asks whether Bang also plans to evacuate, but Bang responds that he does not, as he cannot abandon the family dojo that has been passed down through generations. As the city descends into panic, Genos quickly tries to use his new equipment to destroy the meteor. But before he can do so, Dr. Beaufoy, an S-class hero, arrives at the scene to attempt to stop and destroy the meteor as well. Genos asks that they collaborate, but he refuses, stating that he came to test his new weapon. He reveals that whatever happens, he will not die, since what Genos is seeing is a robot operated by remote control. He then reprimands Genos for calling him by his real name, since his hero name is Metal Knight. Metal Knight then fires his new weapon. As much as Genos is impressed by its power, both of them can see that it did not cause a single bit of damage to the meteor. Faced with this, Genos performs calculations to determine whether he can also destroy it. While doing so, Bang appears at the scene to advise him to act without thinking, since the result will not change. Genos, upon hearing him, remembers Saitama and decides to give his utmost effort, even putting his life at risk. The cyborg fires, but is frustrated to see that he can do nothing and recommends that Bang run, as only 9 seconds remain. Suddenly, Saitama arrives at the scene, takes a great leap to reach the meteor, and destroys it with a single punch. However, this causes the meteor to fragment into a very large number of small pieces that wreak havoc across the city. The scene shifts, and we see that 3 days later the city is in chaos, even though the full impact of the meteor was avoided. Meanwhile, Genos thinks that if Saitama had worked together with Metal Knight, everything would have ended better. Saitama tells him that Metal Knight is a selfish fool, and that, however much damage there was, it was minimal damage that cost no one their life. Genos, upon hearing this, weighs the different possibilities and, seeing that this was the best outcome, believes Saitama should be considered a legendary hero. However, it worries him that his master does not realize that there are people trying to paint him as the villain behind the destruction. Afterward, Saitama asks him whether he thinks they will be moved up in the rankings. Genos says that everyone was promoted, and Saitama, upon hearing his new position, complains that they only moved him up a few spots, which does not seem fair. Genos agrees, stating that he should have been promoted directly to A class or S class, but believes the organization may not have done so because they thought he and Metal Knight were somehow involved. Saitama, upon hearing this, grows frustrated, then asks what the threat names mean. Genos explains that Tiger level is a threat that affects people's lives. Demon level affects the functioning of the city. Dragon level is a threat that can destroy multiple cities. And God level is something that can destroy all of humanity. Saitama, after hearing this, is surprised and says it does not matter to him, as he would stay and fight regardless of the level. He then proceeds to leave the city in search of some work that will help him move up in the rankings. During his walk, Saitama is intercepted by Tank Top Black Hole and also by Tank Top Tiger. Both accuse him of cheating, alleging that he uses S-class heroes to gain points and move up in the rankings, and so declare their intention to finish him off. Tank Top Black Hole accuses him out loud, shouting that it was he who destroyed the city, which incites all the nearby residents to begin demanding Saitama's resignation. At the same time, Genos checks online forums and sees the wave of hatred that has formed against his master. Meanwhile, Bang observes Saitama being harassed and considers not intervening, thinking that since he is the strongest person he knows, it would be interesting to see him brought down by this kind of situation. Then, Tank Top Black Hole, together with his brother, tries to manipulate the people, saying that Saitama wants to kill them all and that they will stop him. However, when they attempt to strike Saitama, they end up being humiliated, defeated with extreme ease. After this, Saitama addresses everyone, stating that it was he who destroyed the meteor and that if they have a problem with that, they should say so openly. But Genos, seeing that his master is being consumed by anger, decides to remove him from the scene. Later, he tells him that he has never known anyone like him and promises to follow him always, no matter what happens. Several days later, a monster attacks the city and Moomin Rider tries to get to the scene quickly. However, upon arriving, he finds the monster already defeated and hears rumors that an individual killed it with a single punch. Driven by this, he later searches online for a photo of the hero. He finds a photo of Saitama and reflects that he must do something to be able to evolve. The next day, a new maritime threat emerges in the city, and a hero named Stinger steps up to face them. Meanwhile, we discover that Saitama has managed to climb to second place in the C-class rankings, meaning he will soon be promoted. Saitama asks Genos whether, upon moving to B-class, he will no longer be required to work once a week, and Genos confirms that this is correct. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a call requesting Genos' presence in City J. Saitama, seeing that Genos is occupied, turns on the television, where a report states that a group of monsters called the Sea Folk is attacking City J. Together, they watch as an A-class hero faces them alone, despite already being at his limits. Then, we observe that Moomin Rider, who was also watching the television, quickly decides to head to City J. We are then taken to Stinger, who tells the monsters that it is time to end the fight. Seeing that only 4 of them remain alive, he lunges rapidly at the monsters, wielding his giant bamboo lance. But after defeating them, he begins to gloat, which causes him to lower his guard, allowing another monster to strike him with great force. As Saitama and Genos try to reach the scene, we discover that Moomin Rider is also rushing to get there. Along the way, he crosses paths with other heroes who recommend he not approach, arguing that this threat is beyond the reach of C-class. Moomin Rider, even upon hearing that it is a demon-level threat, completely ignores them and heads at full speed to the scene. Afterward, we see Lightning Max observing whoever killed the hero called Stinger. Suddenly, the monster surprises him by positioning itself behind him, which forces him to defend himself automatically. In doing so, he realizes he is no match for the monster and prepares to escape. However, the monster is faster and strikes him hard. Max attempts to hurt it again, but upon hitting it, achieves the same result, and finally falls defeated. As he falls from the building, he is saved just in time by prisoner Puripuri, an S-class hero who notices that Speedo Sound Sonic took advantage of the confusion to escape along with him. Then they see the monster approaching, and prisoner Puripuri prepares to face it. The confrontation begins, and we are shown that both are very strong. Sonic, observing them, thinks the hero is putting on an act, pretending not to feel the monster's blows. After receiving a hit, prisoner Puripuri decides to transform into his angel mode to finish off the monster. He launches himself toward the monster and attacks it directly with his angel rush. This energy display allows Genos to locate them, and he decides to head there. Meanwhile, the monster confesses to the hero that his blows hurt it a little, and then attacks him powerfully, demonstrating how bombardment-type attacks should be used. Sonic, seeing how the hero is defeated, asks the monster its name. It introduces itself as the Deep Sea King, leader of the Sea Folk and future conqueror of the world. Sonic laughs at it and says that even though he is not a hero, he will end its life at that very instant. The Deep Sea King begins to attack with great force. However, Sonic demonstrates that, however strong it may be, its attacks are slow, which works in his favor. But this only serves to enrage the Deep Sea King, who shows its great speed combined with its strength. Then we observe that Mumen Rider crosses paths with Saitama, who is lost looking for the monster. The scene shifts to Sonic, who in the middle of his fight thinks about retreating to find his weapons, but when he tries to escape, the Deep Sea King catches up to him, thinking it had already caught him. Finding himself cornered, Sonic removes his clothes to manage to flee, swearing that he will kill it at their next meeting. Shortly after, he runs into Genos and warns him not to fight the Deep Sea King, saying the monster is too strong for him. Genos, however, ignores the advice and realizes the monster is heading for the evacuation center. With a terrifying air of sovereignty, the Deep Sea King finally reaches the shelter, ready to annihilate every soul present. Before it can deliver the first blow, a trembling C-class hero steps forward and attempts a desperate surrender, promising that everyone would do whatever it wanted. The monster lets out a cruel laugh. Death was inevitable. That had always been the plan. The fear is so great that the poor hero wets himself. At that instant, as though contagiously seized by a sudden courage, other heroes who had been hiding at the scene join him, taking a fighting stance. Even Snek, who had been concealed, reveals himself. For a brief moment, they believe that together they have a chance. What an illusion. The Deep Sea King dispatches them all with humiliating ease, mocking the terrified survivors. It is at that exact moment of despair that Genos appears on the battlefield. Meanwhile, kilometers away, Saitama is on the phone, using a device borrowed from Mumen Rider. On the other end of the line, the Hero Association headquarters scoffs, warning that a C-class hero would have no chance whatsoever and asking him to return the phone to its owner. It is then that Saitama introduces himself by name and announces that he is also a hero, leaving the operators at the headquarters completely dumbfounded. At the same time, back in the fight, Genos declares to the Deep Sea King that he will eliminate it and launches a devastating attack, filling the hearts of the civilians with hope. The joy, however, is short-lived. In the blink of an eye, the Deep Sea King reappears and, in a brutal move, tears off one of Genos' arms. At headquarters, doubt sets in. Should they give the fight's location to Saitama, a mere C-class hero? However, the association's directors see the situation as a golden opportunity to test the true abilities of that enigmatic newcomer and give the order to pass the information on to him. Back in the hell of the shelter, a furious Genos shouts for people to flee as he can no longer guarantee victory. The Deep Sea King, however, warns with a sadistic smile that no one will be escaping. Without hesitation, Genos fires his incineration cannons in a desperate attempt to immobilize it. Despite all the cyborg's effort, the monster manages to free itself and spits a jet of acid toward a girl who had been cheering for him. In an act of pure sacrifice, Genos throws himself in front of her, using his own body as a shield. The acid melts his circuits and leaves him in critical condition. The Deep Sea King slowly approaches to deliver the final blow, mocking his decision to sacrifice himself for some random child. Suddenly, coming from nowhere, Mumen Rider bursts onto the scene, interrupting the execution. He hurls himself at the monster, but ends up being gravely injured in seconds. Even knowing how utterly outmatched he is, he keeps fighting, determined to prevent the Deep Sea King from killing Genos. In his mind, Mumen Rider thinks that he does not deserve his B-class rank for being so weak, but decides to face the monster regardless because at that moment there is no one else to do it. "Shut up and die already," roars the Deep Sea King. It is then that the people in the shelter, inspired by his bravery, begin to shout his name in unison. Encouraged, he prepares his strongest attack, the Justice Crash, but the monster defeats him with a single merciless blow. As Moomin Rider falls, defeated, he is caught by Saitama. Upon seeing the sorry state of Genos, concern overtakes Saitama. When he realizes his friend is still alive, a cold calm settles on his face. He was going to finish off that sea monster. The Deep Sea King attacks Saitama with all its strength, but is shocked to see that its punch has absolutely no effect. The crowd watches, stunned. Saitama was the only one to withstand one of those attacks without even flinching. The monster then begins to narrate its long and tedious origin story. Saitama interrupts it and asks it to summarize. Basically, he tells it to its face that it is too much text. The audacity blinds the Deep Sea King with rage and makes it attack again. This time, however, Saitama responds and with a single punch disintegrates the monster. Celebration erupts in the shelter. They were finally safe. A few days later, Saitama and Genos receive mail from the Hero Association, filled with fan letters. Saitama, excited at the prospect, wants to open them immediately. The reality, however, is bitter. Genos received a mountain of letters, while Saitama received only one, and it was a hate letter. The cyborg is furious and recalls what really happened after the fight. In a flashback, we see that right after the defeat of the Deep Sea King, a man in the middle of the crowd began to downplay Saitama's feat, shouting that the other heroes had fought and suffered for nothing. To protect their honor and image, Saitama blatantly lies, claiming that he only managed to win because the others had already weakened the monster for him. And so, because of that altruistic lie, people came to know him as the phony of City Z. Saitama sacrificed his own reputation so that the other heroes' reputations would remain intact. Back in the present, Saitama finds small comfort in at least receiving one thank you note. Shortly after, Genos shows him a letter from the Association promoting him to the top of C class. It is then revealed that the same letter summoned Saitama for a visit to headquarters. There, he is informed that he has the opportunity to be interviewed for a move up to B class. He accepts on the spot, determined not to fall behind while Genos already shines as an S-class hero. The scene abruptly cuts to Amai Mask, a prominent figure in the hero world, who is furious that his filming session was interrupted by Saitama's interview. Irritated, he tells his assistant that he should only be bothered for interviews with A-class heroes, or truly important people. At dusk, Saitama returns home, now as a B-class hero. On his way, he stops to eat and runs into Moomin Rider. The latter invites him to a meal to celebrate his promotion and then admits that he had been looking for him, as he felt the letter he sent had not been sufficient to express the full extent of his feelings. The following scene reveals the awakening of a monster that had been frozen, now eager to confront humans. His plan is to take advantage of the fact that the Subterranean King and the Deep Sea King are dead in order to impose the supremacy of the dinosaur clan and take the planet back. However, while walking lost in his thoughts, he is surprised by a barrage of missiles. We observe that the one coordinating the attack is the bespectacled director of the association. Upon reaching the creature's location, he dispatches Tatsumaki to deal with the problem. When she stands before the monster, it questions her identity, but as it tries to respond, she is interrupted by a call on her phone. Through the call, she discovers, to her fury, that the agency demands her immediate return, even though she just arrived. The dinosaur, oblivious to the situation, introduces itself as the ancient king who once dominated the planet. She, however, completely ignores it, and furious, demands that it be quiet while she is on the call. The ancient king moves in to intimidate, to which Tatsumaki reacts by laughing at the shape of its chin. The monster, unhinged by the mockery, begins its attack, and at that moment realizes she is no ordinary human. Tatsumaki flies out of the way and observes it from above, where she hears the creature reveal its own weak point. She states that if that is what it wants, its wish will be granted, and at the moment it prepares for a new blow, Tatsumaki uses her psychokinesis to hurl a meteor down upon it. The focus of the story shifts to Bang's dojo, where it is revealed that Saitama and Genos are present for a class. However, they confess to Bang that they had not come for that, as they were unaware that the invitation was an attempt to recruit them as disciples, with both of them refusing to learn new techniques such as the flowing water crushing rock. Bang's best student, Charanko, grows irritated with them and attacks. Genos, however, defeats him with a single move. The cyborg is disappointed and questions Bang about the young man's level. Bang explains that his disciples were once better, but that his truest and most talented apprentice went mad and injured the other students. Upon hearing about a strong disciple, Saitama becomes interested and asks his name. Bang replies that it is Garo, whom he himself beat and expelled, despite being his best student. Saitama comments that to do that, Bang must be very strong, which enrages Charanko. Worked up, he begins to describe his master's strength to Saitama, but Bang interrupts him, asking him not to embarrass him, as Saitama is much stronger than he is. All of a sudden, a member of the association arrives to deliver messages to Bang and Genos, informing them of an emergency summons for all S-class heroes at headquarters. Afterward, Genos and Bang invite Saitama to enter the association headquarters. There, they encounter Atomic Samurai, who greets the S-class heroes but throws a look of doubt at Saitama. Bang introduces him, stating that he will eventually become an S-class hero, and so he decided to bring him along. However, when Saitama tries to greet him, the samurai refuses, declaring that he will only do so when Saitama proves his worth. Then Tatsumaki arrives at the scene and also insults Saitama for being a B-class hero, considering his presence disrespectful to the others. Saitama asks Genos who the lost little girl is. While Genos clarifies her identity, the hero furiously denies being treated like a child. The narrative advances to the meeting room, where all S-class heroes are introduced in order of their rankings. The meeting begins with words from Sich, who reveals to all of them the need for them to save the world. He confesses, however, his fear that some of them, no matter how powerful they may be, may not return alive, and offers them the chance to leave at that moment without it affecting their positions. He tells them that the great seer, Shibabawa, has passed away, which causes general surprise. The director explains that she died choking on cough drops, having difficulty breathing while prophesying events for the next 6 months. Sich then reveals that her predictions had always come true, and that the problem lies in her final vision, in which she said that the Earth is in trouble. Upon hearing this, many heroes believe it to be an exaggeration, but Sich corrects them, highlighting that the seer had never used the word trouble in her prophecies, which leads him to believe that a threat greater than dragon level is approaching. Therefore, he asks all of them to prepare to fight over the following 6 months. Upon hearing the prophecy, Saitama finds it vague and obvious, arguing that the 6-month window is so wide that the event could happen at any moment, even the same day or the following day. His reflection is abruptly interrupted when the headquarters comes under attack, led by Sky King and his band of monsters. However, before they can cause any damage, they are brutally eliminated by Melzargard, a monstrous multi-headed creature who serves as guardian of a colossal spaceship, which in turn begins an attack on the city. Back in the control room, the association's directors try to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. Sich, checking his monitor, is horrified to see that 99.8% of the city has been wiped out. While the heroes mobilize to investigate what happened, Genos looks for Saitama so they can go together, but realizes his master had already left ahead of everyone. Outside, Saitama spots the ship, assumes it is aliens, and upon trying to approach is met with a barrage of missiles. Meanwhile, in the midst of the chaos, Ayayan, Atomic Samurai's disciple, bravely tries to hold back the creature guarding the ship. He quickly realizes that the enemy's strength is overwhelming, and, to make matters worse, witnesses the monster's ability to split itself into multiple beings. At the very moment hope seemed to be fading, his master appears to save him, delivering his signature, Atomic Slash. Ayayan, desperate, warns his master that sword attacks are useless against the creature, and insists he abandon him and flee to save himself. Atomic Samurai, however, does not listen and prepares for the confrontation, beginning to question the alien opponent. Shortly after, he notices the arrival of the other heroes, ready to join the fight. Simultaneously, another group of heroes discusses the best strategy to bring down the ship. When they ask King, the highest ranked hero present, for his opinion, his only suggestion is to contact Metal Knight for help. Tatsumaki reacts with irritation, declaring that she can resolve the situation on her own. Genos, upon hearing her, offers to go along, even without being sure of his own effectiveness in the mission. Faced with her refusal, Genos concludes that it does not matter, as he is confident that Saitama has already managed to infiltrate the enemy fortress. And indeed, Saitama continues his journey through the interior of the ship, looking for the leader of the invaders. Aboard the ship, the alien Gerugan Shup expresses his apprehension about Saitama's infiltration and wonders about the whereabouts of Melzargard, the other elite fighter. The sudden appearance of Lord Boros raises the tension in the environment. Despite the nervousness, Gerugan Shup is compelled to report to Boros that an intruder has managed to breach the defenses and, in a mere 4 minutes, has already caused the destruction of 23% of the ship's structure. Boros calmly says not to worry, as the ship will not be brought down as long as his power sphere remains intact. He then orders Gerugan Shup, Groribus, and Melzargard to eliminate the intruder. Gerugan Shup tries to contact Groribus, but, to his master's shock, reports that Groribus has already been killed. He then swears that, alongside Melzargard, he will put a definitive end to the intruder. The battle on the ground continues to be intense. Puri prisoner is completely exhausted after delivering multiple blows to his opponent. However, the monster, with its impressive regenerative ability, fully recovers its form and energy. The hero then warns his companions not to get hit, as a single impact was enough to take off his arm. When the monster prepares for a new attack, Bang intervenes, striking it with his martial arts techniques. Fed up with being bothered by so many humans, Melzargard sends a message for the ship to fire its cannons. At that instant, he is informed by a companion about the intruder on the ship, and is pressured to finish his fight quickly to return. Hearing the message, Melzargard decides to use all of his strength to end the fight, but is immediately attacked by all the heroes in a coordinated fashion, who managed to shatter him. Seeing the situation, it is said that physical attacks are not very effective and that they should pull back to plan a new attack. But the other heroes refuse, since the only thing they know how to do is strike, which frustrates Puri prisoner. King thinks they are done for. Gerugan Shup from the ship orders Melzargard to return, emphasizing that the intruder is the top priority. Melzargard responds that he cannot, as he is being held back by very persistent opponents, and asks for the ship's cannons to be fired against them. Gerugan Shup denies the request, explaining that those responsible for the artillery have already been defeated by the intruder, and that Melzargard himself needs to alert the gunners. As the fight continues, Melzargard grows worried upon realizing that Metalbat has figured out how to kill him. Metalbat shares his discovery with the others, and they begin to attack the alien repeatedly. It now places its last hope in the ship's bombardment. On another front, Gerugan Shup tries, unsuccessfully, to convince Saitama to leave the ship. The attempt fails, and Saitama reaches the command bridge, coming face to face with the alien. Gerugan Shup immediately launches an attack using his telekinetic gravity control. Saitama does not understand what is happening. Then Gerugan Shup is left incredulous upon seeing that Saitama suffered absolutely no damage after being attacked at full strength. Seeing that his enemy's power amounted to hurling rocks, Saitama decides to show that he can do the same, and defeats him with a single thrown rock. After the feat, he asks the rest of the crew where he can find the boss. The scene moves to Child Emperor, who informs Sich that the ship's energy levels are rising dangerously. With this information, Sich warns the police teams to assist with the evacuation, and orders the rescue team to suspend operations, as they must prepare for a possible impact. Then, we observe the gunner firing missiles at Melzargard's enemies. By this point, Melzargard has already lost 2 of his heads, but just when he believed it was all over, Tatsumaki appears to stop the missiles and redirect them against the ship. Enraged by the turn of events, Melzargard launches a desperate attack, but his recklessness only allows the heroes to capture him and destroy 1 more of his heads. The narrative then turns to the interior of the ship, where Saitama finally finds Lord Boros. The alien leader introduces himself and demands to know the identity of the intruder. Saitama reveals his name, and after questioning the reason for the invasion, warns him that he will pay dearly for the destruction of the city. In response, Boros recounts an ancient prophecy that foretold he would become so strong as to be tormented by boredom. The monotony was broken when a seer told him that on this planet he would find a worthy opponent capable of challenging him and providing entertainment. He admits that the 20-year journey made him doubt, thinking it was just a distraction, but now, standing before Saitama, he realizes the prophecy was true and feels elated. Saitama, however, punches him and calls him an idiot, stating that invading a planet purely for fun is the behavior of a lunatic. To the hero's surprise, Boros survives the blow. Irritated, the alien laments the destruction of his armor, which served to contain his immense power. Freed from its constraints, Boros begins a transformation and advances on Saitama, who watches with an expression of total confusion. Saitama manages to block the initial attack, leading Boros to press on with a rapid sequence of punches. However, the hero keeps up with Boros without difficulty and, in a quick move, tears off one of his arms, leaving the alien astonished. Outside, the hero Superalloy Darkshine is frustrated to see Tatsumaki dominating the situation on her own. In an attempt to help, he uses his immense strength to hurl a large chunk of rubble at the ship. However, Tatsumaki, who was concentrating to deliver a massive attack, scolds him harshly, telling him to get out of the way for getting in her way, and humiliating him in front of the others. Aboard the ship, the alien crew panics at the new assault. Using her psychic powers, Tatsumaki launches a barrage of projectiles against the ship, inflicting severe damage. Observing her, Genos reflects on just how powerful she is, going so far as to believe she might be capable of bringing down the ship on her own. At that moment, Drive Knight announces his departure to take care of other matters, considering the situation under control. Child Emperor agrees, noting that many other heroes have already left as well. Before leaving, Drive Knight approaches Genos and gives him an enigmatic warning. Metal Knight is your enemy. Be careful. Faced with Genos' confusion, he only adds for him to keep his distance for now, as he will understand everything in due time. The action returns to Melzagard, who attempts a new attack against the heroes. With a terrifying expression, he tells them that the outcome of the battle has already been decided. However, he is caught off guard upon seeing Bang, whom he believed he had incapacitated, standing and ready to fight again. The moment his guard drops, Atomic Samurai takes advantage of the opening to position himself behind him. With his technique, Atomic Samurai cuts him into countless pieces, enraging the creature. It is then that Bang reveals he has deciphered its secret, the ability to move a vital core throughout its body. Bang then demonstrates his discovery by extracting the core and crushing it, putting a definitive end to the fight. However, Metal Bat warns them, reminding them that the battle is not over, as the true enemy still looms overhead. Elsewhere in the city, Mumen Rider feels a mix of pride and relief at having managed to rescue all the survivors from his assigned area. The focus returns to Saitama, who continues his epic battle against Boros. The alien manages to strike Saitama repeatedly, at one point even launching him out of the ship. Seeing that the hero keeps standing up to his blows, Boros is moved, as it is the first time anyone has truly challenged him. He then decides to release his explosive power, firing it at Saitama, who receives the attack head-on without a scratch. Surprised, Boros uses his speed to appear behind Saitama and strikes his face. Still, Saitama seems completely indifferent to the impacts. His rival then explains that his species evolved on a hostile planet, which granted them the finest regenerative ability in the universe. Boros boasts of being above all others, with superior physical attributes, latent energy, and regenerative capacity. Therefore, a wound that would be fatal to anyone else is insignificant to him, healing in seconds. To prove it, he concentrates his energy and instantly regenerates the arm Saitama had torn off. Saitama, bored, tells him to shut up for talking too much and asks whether the fight is already over. Shocked by the question, Boros recharges his energy and responds that it is not. He then activates his technique, Meteor Burst, and with it bombards Saitama, destroying part of the ship in the process. While attacking, he explains that he is using his latent energy to push his body beyond its limits. The force of the blows is so great that Saitama is launched all the way to the moon. There, fascinated by the view of Earth, he plays a little with the lunar rocks before deciding to return to the planet, leaping with enough force to damage the lunar surface. Meanwhile, Boros awaits the result of his attack, revealing to himself that using this level of power drastically shortens his lifespan, making it a last resort to end fights quickly. His monologue is interrupted by terror upon seeing Saitama returning from space completely unharmed and ready to finish the fight. Even so, Boros decides to attack again with all the energy he has left. Saitama dodges his blows and delivers a powerful punch to his stomach, making him cough up blood, before unleashing his technique, consecutive normal punches, which disintegrates him into particles. However, since the power core was not destroyed, the alien regenerates once more, determined to win. To do so, he decides to release all of his energy in his final attack, the collapsing star roaring cannon, believing that with it he can kill Saitama and obliterate the entire planet. Seeing his opponent use his maximum power, Saitama declares that he will also use his secret weapon. The hero then executes the technique serious punch. The impact of the blow not only obliterates Boros' attack, but also destroys the ship's power core and splits the clouds on a planetary scale. The subsequent scene reveals Boros' body, completely devastated and drained of energy, but still conscious. He questions Saitama whether that means his defeat. To the protagonist's surprise, his opponent admits that the prophecy was correct, as the battle had been excellent. Saitama agrees, but Boros accuses him of lying, claiming that he held back throughout the entire fight, and for that reason did not feel on par with the hero. Laughing at the irony of not being able to trust prophecies, he praises Saitama's strength. Shortly after, the ship begins to fall, surprising the heroes who had been watching everything. Following Bang's suggestion, they run toward headquarters in search of shelter so as not to be crushed. The narrative then focuses on Amai Mask, who contemplates the devastation and questions how City A could have been destroyed. Metal Bat approaches and asks him what happened. Visibly irritated, Amai Mask asks him about his absence. The hero responds that he was in the middle of filming and upon feeling the tremor came to the scene, finding only ruins. Metal Bat explains that a giant spaceship attacked them and bombarded the area. Upon hearing that the situation was resolved, Amai Mask is furious, considering it absurd to call that a victory. He declares that he is disgusted with all of them, labeling them incompetent. His words generate discomfort among the heroes, and Metal Bat reprimands him, reminding him that he arrived late. Amai Mask agrees, but still blames them for not having protected City A. Atomic Samurai, exasperated, justifies that they were in a meeting and that when they came out, the city was already in ruins. Amai Mask retorts that this is irrelevant, as the media will not forgive them. He calls them pathetic and demands their resignations if they cannot prove themselves useful. The words set Metal Bat ablaze, and he steps toward Amai Mask in an attempt to intimidate him. However, Amai Mask reveals that he remains in A-class on purpose in order to prevent vermin like them from reaching S-class. The tension among the heroes is broken by the arrival of a capsule from the sky, from which Metal Knight emerges, promptly reprimanded by the others for his late arrival. Ignoring the criticism, he approaches the alien ship, visibly fascinated. Genos confronts him to find out his intentions. Metal Knight reveals his desire to take the ship in order to develop new weapons. The conversation is interrupted by another hero, who reports the discovery of a surviving alien. Amai Mask, without hesitation, steps forward and uses his disintegration power to eliminate the remaining creatures, leaving everyone stunned. Before leaving, he addresses Genos and expresses his disappointment. Watching him walk away, Genos reflects that Amai Mask resembles him before he knew his master, which leads him to suppose that some traumatic event may have shaped his personality. Afterward, Saitama emerges from the ship. To Tatsumaki's surprise, Genos runs to meet him, visibly concerned, and asks whether he managed to defeat the enemy leader. Saitama confirms it and reveals that it was the most powerful opponent he has ever faced. However, Tatsumaki, irritated at being ignored while Saitama was walking away, begins to scold them. Genos intervenes in defense of his master and insults her, which provokes an attack on her part. While the hero threatens Saitama, Bang arrives and reprimands her for her unprofessional conduct. Finally, the narrative, from Genos' perspective, informs us that these events were recorded as a milestone of great historical importance. Over time, the tragedy of the lost city faded from memory. Genos also reports that Metal Knight used the wreckage of the ship to reinforce the Hero Association headquarters, improving its infrastructure and allowing A-class and higher heroes to reside at the location. The scene cuts to Saitama and Genos returning from shopping with ingredients for a stew. While Saitama lists the items they still need to buy, his attention is drawn to a hero action figure. He confesses to Genos that he envies the heroes who have their own figures, which leads Genos to suggest contacting a manufacturer. Saitama refuses the idea, saying that is not how things work. At that moment, a monster known as Tongue Stretcher appears, using his oversized tongue to harass women in the street. Suddenly, King paralyzes it with just a look, causing the monster to plead for forgiveness. However, in the middle of the crowd's applause, an interior monologue from King reveals that he no longer wants to be a hero and questions how he ended up in this situation. irritated by the lack of peace in his life. Afterward, King finally acquires the limited edition of Doki Doki Sisters 2. In his thoughts, he describes the pleasure he feels running home, eager to dive into the video game. Along the way, he is spotted by Saitama and Genos. Saitama does not recognize him, but Genos identifies him as the strongest man after Saitama and wonders about his presence there. A scream draws attention to the appearance of a monster, but instead of acting, the two decide to watch King's strength. The monster, a machine god named G4, threatens the hero. King, for his part, simply reminds it of his nickname, the strongest man on earth. G4 retorts that this is precisely why it came to kill him. King assumes a fighting stance and activates his King engine, a sound from which, according to legend, no monster survives to tell the tale. The robot, however, announces that it is conducting combat tests and needs King to fight at full strength to collect accurate data. Confused, King wonders what organization the robot belongs to, and, not understanding the situation, asks for a break to go to the bathroom before the fight, arguing that he cannot fight at maximum capacity if he needs to urinate. G4 surprisingly agrees, granting him 10 minutes and warning him that for every minute of delay, a human will be killed. Meanwhile, Saitama observes the robot and comments to Genos on its formidable appearance. Genos agrees, going so far as to admit that the robot might outperform him, classifying it as at minimum a demon-level threat. The perspective then turns to King, who is paralyzed with fear, aware that the robot came with the objective of killing him. In the midst of an anxiety crisis, King reflects on his true identity, a simple, unemployed otaku and 29-year-old hikikomori, far from the hero everyone imagines. He laughs bitterly at the foolishness of people who believe in his King engine, thinking that his only real ability is being more cowardly than anyone. He reveals in his thoughts that his encounters with monsters were mere coincidences, where the creature was always defeated by someone else while he had his eyes closed. The worst of it, he admits, is that this situation repeated itself several times. Despite this, the Hero Association recognized him as an S-class hero, hailing him as the most powerful newcomer. Now he finds himself trapped in this farce, which he himself perpetuated, never imagining the consequences. Panic makes him vomit while he hears the sounds of destruction caused by G4, desperately searching for an escape route. Realizing there is no other way out, he decides to sneak away. However, during his escape attempt, he spots someone already in combat with G4. It is then revealed that Genos, under Saitama's orders and with the personal goal of breaking into the S-class top 10, has taken over the fight against the robot. With the situation under control, Saitama says goodbye and heads home, wishing his disciple good luck. Afterward, King finally manages to get safely to his home. He reflects that the image of G4 will certainly give him nightmares, but opts to play video games to distract himself from what happened. While choosing a name for his character, he is startled by Saitama's voice, who followed him and entered through an open window. Irritated, King reprimands him for breaking and entering. He tries to use his S-class hero status to intimidate Saitama, but quickly recognizes him as the B-class hero who was present at the elite meeting. Saitama, on the other hand, shows curiosity about King's game, surprised by his unusual tastes. King, embarrassed, makes up the excuse that he bought the game by mistake, since he was actually looking for an action title. Indifferent to the justification, Saitama asks him to put on another game, leaving King baffled by the total lack of respect coming from a lower-ranked hero. Meanwhile, Genos' battle continues. He manages to melt the interior of G4 using his tactical transformation arms, only to discover that it was an outer shell, from which the true robot emerges and immediately attacks him. Back at the apartment, Saitama questions King about why he fled from the robot that Genos is now fighting. The question makes King break into a cold sweat. Saitama explains that he followed him to ask that very question, but found him playing video games. He continues, asking whether King has simply lost interest in monsters, or whether perhaps he has become so powerful that fighting no longer holds any appeal. Faced with King's silence, Saitama decides to leave to deal with a new dragon-level threat that has just appeared. Before leaving, he asks what King intends to do. At that exact moment, a gigantic monster crashes into the building. Observing the creature, Saitama wonders aloud whether King possesses something that attracts these beings. Horrified by the suggestion, King laments his streak of bad luck, which seems to have gotten worse recently. Saitama then stares him down and asks whether he is going to fight now that a monster has invaded his home. The scene returns to Genos, who finds himself in serious trouble under G4's laser beam assault. The robot reiterates that its primary target remains King. King, for his part, stays in his apartment, paralyzed by terror, mentally reliving every time he has ever fled from a monster. He realizes that in each of those instances, while he was merely trying to escape, someone else defeated the creature, leading everyone to believe he was responsible for the victory. King admits to himself that he has never truly fought in his entire life, despite having earned a nickname that marks him as an omen of doom for his enemies. The action returns to the battle, where Genos manages to dodge G4's lasers by using the mist from a fire extinguisher. He then fires a powerful jet of water to create a curtain of steam and temporarily blind his opponent. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Genos manages to immobilize G4 and tells it that there is someone even stronger than King. Back at the apartment, Saitama continues to pressure King to defend himself, but the hero is simply trembling with fear. In tears, King thinks that he is not the person everyone idolizes, and decides to tell Saitama the truth. Upon hearing his confession, Saitama defeats the monster with a single blow. Noticing that King has wet himself out of fear, he says that he believes his words. King, initially confused, has a flash of memory. He recalls the day he was injured on the face by a monster and saved by a young man who called himself a hero for fun. He then realizes that the B-class hero standing before him is the same man who saved him in the past. Saitama then asks whether King enjoys pretending to be a hero. When King answers negatively, Saitama states that, although it is none of his business, he is willing to keep up the charade. However, Saitama wants to know what King's decision will be: continue with the lie or abandon the life of a superhero. King admits that he still does not know what to do. Saitama then suggests that he start training to become truly strong, and afterward leaves. The final scene shows Genos bringing the wreckage of G4 to Dr. Kuseno so it can be analyzed for possible improvements. Dr. Kuseno expresses his concern, advising Genos not to take such risks in his pursuit of justice. Genos, however, states that it is necessary, as he has set the goal of becoming one of the top 10 heroes in S-Class. The doctor then asks whether there has been any progress in the search for the cyborg that destroyed his hometown. Genos responds that there are no leads, but reaffirms his promise to find and destroy it with his own hands. Concerned, the doctor warns him about the danger that cyborg represents and asks that when he finds it, he not act recklessly. Instead, he should notify him first. Genos agrees, promising that he will, as he considers it a fight that belongs to both of them. The scene unfolds at the Hero Association headquarters, where Sich addresses the newly formed disaster countermeasure team. He begins by thanking everyone for their presence, emphasizing that their criminal pasts would be overlooked on this occasion. Sich informs them that several heroes are present for security and will not intervene unless provoked. However, the criminals react with mockery, considering the possibility of eliminating the heroes or taking control of the base. Among the heroes, Magic Trick Man of A-Class expresses his confusion about the logic of gathering such a group. Another hero, Heavy Tank Loincloth, admits his discomfort, stating he did not expect to find criminals there. Blue Fire, for his part, declares that he will eliminate anyone who makes a suspicious move. Sich, observing the security, feels confident that the heroes present are sufficient to contain any problem and begins the meetings. His speech is interrupted by one of the criminals, who asks about Saitama's whereabouts. Sich questions the man's identity but states that the question is irrelevant at the moment. The criminal retorts that without Saitama, their presence there is useless. He reveals that he has knowledge of Shibabawa's prophecy and of the hero's inability to handle all the disasters. He exposes to everyone that the real reason for the gathering is Sich's need for capable individuals, regardless of their character. Shortly after, Speedo Sound Sonic announces his refusal to participate, declaring that he has no interest in playing superhero. Shortly after, Sonic is seen lamenting that he wasted his time at the meeting since he obtained no information about Saitama. Coincidentally, Saitama is also the target of another group, this one led by Fubuki, the #1 hero in B-Class. Fubuki suspects that Saitama is hiding some secret, given his meteoric rise from C-Class to B. Her motivation, like Sonic's, is to discover the source of Saitama's immense strength. Back at the meeting, Sich appeals for humanity to unite in order to face the imminent threat. He details the current number of heroes in each class, concluding that they are not enough. For that reason, he offers the criminals monetary rewards for each monster they eliminate. Heavy tank loincloth objects, calling the initiative a waste of money, as he doubts their usefulness in critical moments. One of the criminals confronts him, demanding respect and claiming to have killed far more monsters than he has. In response, Heavy Tank Loincloth attacks him, shouting that they have no ideals. The brawl is suddenly interrupted by another criminal, who surprisingly agrees with the hero, stating that most of those present would be no match for him. He then introduces himself as Garo. Garo explains that he trained hard out of his admiration for monsters, and that he has already closed down several dojos. He issues a challenge to everyone present: attack him to prove who the strongest are, as that was his only purpose in being there. Sitch accuses him of making a ridiculous spectacle and demands that he leave. Garo, however, laughs off the order, reminding them that this is no way to treat a guest, and promises that the party will turn into a massacre. Responding to Sitch's request, the heroes intervene, but Garo, with apparent ease, defeats them using his flowing water, crushing rock. While the other criminals acclaim him, he turns to face them and warns them that they will be next, because unlike everyone who sees themselves as human, he considers himself a monster. Bluefire confronts him, saying that a human who proclaims himself a monster is nothing but garbage. Upon trying to incinerate him with his flamethrowers, he realizes too late that Garo, in a single movement, has severed his hand. Seeing the chaos, Sitch hides to call for reinforcements and watches in horror as Garo kills Bluefire. Upon hearing that reinforcements are on the way, Garo considers the difficulty of facing multiple S-class heroes. After demonstrating his superiority by defeating everyone, he addresses Sitch, declaring war on the association and promising to return in 6 months stronger to walk through the front door. The narrative then shows Fubuki, accompanied by her subordinates Wild Monkey and Eyelashes, continuing her search for Saitama. Meanwhile, Saitama himself is with Genos, who informs him of his promotion to 7th place in B class. Saitama is surprised, since all he has been doing is defeating the monsters he encounters. Genos explains that the number of monsters has been increasing and scolds him for not reporting his victories to the association. He theorizes, however, that his promotion is due to witnesses who report his feats, suggesting that his popularity is growing. Suddenly, Genos' sensors detect something approaching at high speed. Since Saitama was busy, Genos goes to check. Outside, he comes face to face with Speedo Sound Sonic, who demands to see Saitama for a rival showdown. The cyborg, however, blocks his path, declaring that he will not allow anyone to call themselves his master's rival. 20 minutes later, Saitama is playing the video game he took from King when he hears a knock at the door. One of Fubuki's subordinates announces that the number 1 B-class hero wishes to speak with him. Saitama opens the door and, mistaking her for a salesperson, says he does not want any newspapers. Fubuki then formally introduces herself. Saitama admits he does not know who she is, which her companions interpret as an insult and prepare to attack. Noticing the tension, Saitama decides to play along and introduces himself as well. Fubuki questions him about his familiarity with hero factions, explaining that it is necessary to join a group to survive in the profession. Seeing Saitama's confusion, she elaborates. Without affiliating, he will be unable to move up in the rankings, as his rivals will sabotage him. Saitama still does not understand, says he is busy, and asks them to leave. Fubuki insists, offering him a prominent position in her group within B class. Finally understanding, Saitama asks whether her group is the one that will get in his way. He directly questions her on whether she is a threat to other B-class heroes or simply a gang leader. In the end, he reassures her, saying she does not need to worry about him taking her place, as he will be moving up to A-class soon. Faced with Fubuki's persistence, Saitama finally declares that he has no intention of joining her group. In response, Fubuki orders her subordinates to attack him, but Saitama neutralizes them with a single blow. Shocked, Fubuki hears Saitama say that with that kind of mindset, she will not last long. The criticism enrages her, and she prepares for combat, using her powers to raise a cloud of gravel from the ground. Saitama advises her not to proceed, but is ignored. She then unleashes her attack, Blizzard of Hell. Fubuki believes that this technique, capable of tearing flesh, bones, and even stopping a heart, will be the end of the protagonist. However, to her surprise, Saitama mocks her, calling her hysterical and unfit for leadership. He accuses her of not understanding the essence of heroes, who face danger even alone, while she seeks a false sense of strength by surrounding herself with weaker individuals, predicting that this attitude will bring her to tears. Demanding that she not underestimate true heroes, Saitama provokes her. Furious, Fubuki attacks repeatedly, but the result is always the same. He remains completely unscathed. The confrontation is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Genos, who was in the middle of a battle with Sonic. Fubuki is stunned to see Genos there and even more shocked to discover that he is friends with Saitama. Genos, however, corrects her, revealing that he is Saitama's disciple, which leaves her completely speechless. He then notices that she was also trying to subjugate his master. Genos assumes he arrived in time to prevent Saitama from annihilating her, but Saitama himself corrects him, explaining that it was Genos' attack that nearly hit her. The conversation is interrupted again, this time by one of Sonic's explosive shurikens. The ninja declares to Saitama that he will be next, once he finishes tearing his disciple apart, and mocks Genos' power. The cyborg, for his part, coldly retorts that if he shows his true power, Sonic will die. Genos enters combat mode and, with stunning speed, positions himself behind Sonic, delivering a flurry of punches. Sonic manages to dodge and questions Genos' tactic of always trying to catch him from behind. The cyborg then reveals that he managed to cut a strand of his hair, which infuriates the ninja. Sonic counterattacks with his technique, Four Shadows Burial, creating multiple after-images to confuse his opponent. When he prepares for the finishing blow, Genos decides to retaliate with his incineration cannon at maximum output, aiming to annihilate the entire area. At that moment, Saitama intervenes, stopping Genos from blowing up the front of his house and scolding him for using heavy weaponry in a street fight. Irritated by Sonic's persistence, Saitama declares that he will now fight seriously. In response, Sonic launches the technique he developed specifically to defeat him, 10 Shadows Burial. Faced with the attack, Saitama executes his own secret technique, serious consecutive side hops, creating so many after-images of himself that he manages to stop Sonic in his tracks. The ninja is left incredulous, unable to process that Saitama was faster. Meanwhile, Fubuki, who witnessed the entire fight, finally understands that Saitama possesses extraordinary strength far beyond normal. Later, she opens up to the protagonist, explaining that with her psychic powers, she was destined to be the best at everything, until her older sister Tatsumaki came along. Because of her, Fubuki was never able to be number one at anything. For that reason, she decided to settle for being first in B class, where she could maintain her position by leading lower-ranked heroes. Genos questions her. If the goal is to surpass her sister, why not aim for A class? Fubuki explains that although it would not be difficult to become one of the strongest in A class, she would never be first. The top of the class is dominated by Atomic Samurai's disciples, who are in turn prevented from moving up to S class by the unyielding number one hero of A class. She states that no one can surpass Amai Mask, who is shown in a parallel scene defeating a reanimated caveman with extreme ease. Fubuki continues, explaining that there are monsters and heroes whose powers defy logic. She tells Genos that he has the potential to be one of them, although he is not yet at the level of Amai Mask, Tatsumaki, King, or Blast. Faced with these insurmountable barriers, she asks what the problem is with forming alliances to get ahead. Saitama responds that there is no problem at all, but that she should not expect him to become her subordinate, which irritates her again. The discussion is interrupted by the arrival of King, who came to visit Saitama, leaving Fubuki completely dumbfounded. Seeing S-class heroes casually gathering around Saitama, she admits to herself that she wants to be part of that circle. The scene shifts to Bang's dojo, where he reprimands his disciple, Charanko, for not training with full dedication. Observing the young man's injuries, Bang declares that he does not see in him the capacity to learn his techniques as he lacks talent, and immediately expels him from the dojo. Later, Charanko goes to Saitama's house to tell Genos what happened, admitting that his master has been acting strangely. No one in the group, Genos, Fubuki, Saitama, and King, can understand Bang's behavior. However, Genos theorizes that the reason behind it is Garo. Charanko is confused. The cyborg then explains that the Hero Association is hunting Garo the human monster, and that Bang volunteered to stop him, hinting that something serious happened at headquarters that the association is trying to cover up. Genos suggests that Bang expelled Charanko to protect him, foreseeing a dangerous confrontation in which everyone nearby could become involved. Upon hearing this, Charanko is devastated by the idea that his master considers him a burden. In another scene, Charanko wanders through a forest, determined to find and defeat Garo to honor his master. While pondering how difficult it would be to locate him, he is surprised to hear Garo's voice right behind him. The hero hunter is confronting Moomin Rider, declaring that he will hunt him down in order to become a true monster. The scene is interrupted by the arrival of a group of heroes led by Tanktop Vegetarian, who is seeking revenge against Garo. However, Garo defeats him with ease and threatens to kill the rest of the group. As he advances, he is caught off guard by a blow from Tanktop Master. Rather than showing concern, Garo displays a smile of satisfaction, excited to have found a big fish from Sucklas. Tanktop Master then uses his special technique, the Tanktop Tackle, in an attempt to finish the fight, but is shocked to see Garo dodge it with agility, questioning whether his opponent is truly human. Elsewhere, Bang is meditating when his door suddenly opens. He is surprised to see that it is his brother, Bomb. Bang thanks him for his help, and Bomb states that he could not let Garo continue to run free. Meanwhile, the fight between Tanktop Master and Garo continues. After striking him multiple times, the hero convinces himself that his opponent is human. Believing he needs to eliminate him right there, he prepares for the finishing blow, but Moomin Rider steps in his path, arguing that an S-class hero should not kill a human. Tanktop Master agrees and tells Garo he hopes he has learned his lesson, asking him not to hurt anyone else. Garo gets up, agrees that he has learned, and begins to walk away. However, he suddenly turns and reveals that he was lying, promising to kill them all. Before he could even finish the sentence, he realizes that Tanktop Master had already launched an attack. Forced to use Bang's flowing water crushing rock, a technique he had been avoiding, he manages to bring the S-class hero to his knees. Garo then reveals his identity and announces that he will execute the hero's companions in front of him. Moomin Rider tries to intervene but is quickly defeated. Garo prepares to annihilate the rest of the group. In disbelief, they attack together, but the result is disastrous. Charanko, who had been watching from a distance, decides he must intervene to stop Garo. The following morning, Bang and Bomb arrive at the scene of the confrontation, but it is already too late. Bang is devastated to find Charanko gravely injured. The scene then cuts to Saitama visiting Moomin Rider in the hospital. He comments that the human-monster incident has become major headline news, as dozens of heroes were defeated. The cyclist clarifies that the attacker is in fact a human who calls himself a monster, but who possesses extraordinary strength. The description arouses Saitama's curiosity, and he asks whether he is stronger than the Deep Sea King. The injured hero responds that the situation is different. At that moment, Tanktop Master, also hospitalized, intervenes, explaining that the monster uses extremely high-level martial arts. Saitama, recognizing the hero who interrupted the conversation, comments that he remembers him as the one who was the most beaten up. Irritated, Tanktop Master retorts that he was the one who held out the longest, and concludes, frustrated, that martial arts are a serious problem. The narrative turns to Garo, who approaches a boy reading a hero guide. Intrigued, Garo asks to borrow the book for a week, but the boy refuses. Seeing that the book also mentions monsters, Garo takes it by force and, through it, discovers that the hero Golden Ball is on his way to his favorite bar. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Tanktop Master continues to describe Garo's fighting style to Saitama, highlighting his skill at neutralizing heroes. Interested, Saitama asks Charanko to get him a martial arts opponent. Charanko suggests his master Bang, but Saitama finds it inappropriate to force an old man to fight. Realizing he cannot help him, Saitama prepares to leave, but Charanko hands him his ticket to a major martial arts tournament. Seeing that there is a cash prize, and knowing that Charanko will not be able to compete, an idea forms in the protagonist's mind. Elsewhere, Garo locates and challenges Golden Ball. During the fight, Golden Ball manages to wound Garo, which leads him to underestimate his opponent. However, he is shocked when Garo intercepts his secret technique, the Golden Bullet, with minimal movement. When Garo prepares to finish off Golden Ball, he is interrupted by Spring Mustachio. Garo promises to crush him as well. Spring Mustachio attacks first, trying to lure him into a trap. Seeing through the ploy, Garo intercepts the focused thrusting Streak Tornado with his bare hand, gaining the advantage. In the end, Garo defeats Spring Mustachio and turns to the defenseless Golden Ball. Later, after dispatching the heroes, Garo is walking through the city when he happens to cross paths with Saitama. Mistaking the hero hunter for a mugger, Saitama decides to put an end to the situation quickly and strikes him with a karate chop. However, he realizes the blow had absolutely no effect. Saitama then asks what he is doing and whether he is trying to steal his groceries. In response, Garo attacks him, but Saitama strikes back with a blow that knocks him unconscious, since all the protagonist wants is to continue his shopping in peace. The next day, Garo wakes up on top of garbage bags, with no memory of what happened. The narrative then moves to the Hero Association headquarters, where the directors discuss the attacks. They conclude that Garo is responsible, which generates great concern as he does not only attack heroes but also association members. An alert order is issued, and it becomes clear that the usual security escorts will be useless against him, while Garo is shown in his hideout crossing names off a list of heroes. The directors decide that association executives must remain at home, going out only under the protection of an S-class hero to safeguard contacts with sponsors. The scene then shows King at his home, refusing a bodyguard mission. He claims to be busy fighting monsters in search of a secret boss, and recommends they find another hero. Next, we see Metal Bat, visibly annoyed at having to babysit wealthy executives. During the mission, he gets irritated with them for not following his instructions at a sushi restaurant. But before he can do anything, he receives a call from his younger sister and has to step away. Upon returning, he discovers that his charges have been captured by a monster accompanied by others, forcing him to prepare for a fight to rescue the son of one of the executives. Afterward, we see that Saitama has bought a wig to impersonate Charanko and participate in the tournament Charanko had mentioned. However, at the moment of confirming his registration, he cannot remember what Charanko's actual fighting style was and ends up making one up. This causes an acquaintance of Charanko's to later appear in his dressing room. He is Sourface, a former training partner of Charanko's. He questions Saitama about why he is messing around with his friend's fighting style, but since Saitama gives no answers and tries to dodge the subject, Sourface reassures him, saying he understands he is just nervous. He then begins to explain his reasons for entering the tournament, a speech Saitama listens to with little interest until the moment Sourface mentions the incident from the previous year when a masked fighter called Wolfman won the championship. The problem was that at the end, the real Wolfman was found unconscious, which led the organizers to change the rules, prohibiting the use of disguises or false names. Sourface also mentions that he does not know whether forging a fighting style, as Saitama did, is permitted, which leaves the hero concerned. Saitama then asks what would happen if the deception were discovered, and the answer is serious. He would be permanently disqualified and could even be reported, risking imprisonment. While Saitama panics, Sourface states his belief that Garo was responsible for that incident the previous year. In the meantime, we see Garo again with the boy who had asked for his book back, only this time the boy insists they read it together instead of handing it over. Back in the scene with Saitama, he reflects on who this Garo person is, since he has heard others mention the name. Sourface continues explaining and recounts that Garo was expelled from the dojo by Bang after revealing his true nature. He had hidden his predatory instinct for a long time, but on a day of rage, he attacked everyone in the dojo. Full of anger, Sourface admits that if it were not for Garo, he would never have left the dojo. Now his goal is to win the tournament to regain lost confidence and prove he can be on par with Garo. Elsewhere, Charanko talks to Mumen Rider and confesses he is worried about Saitama, as he believes he wants to participate in the tournament in his place. Charanko fears that, being an amateur, Saitama will end up getting killed. Saitama, in the dressing room, tells Sourface that Charanko even faced Garo alone, and shortly after admits that he intends to defeat Garo as well, since he is certain their paths will cross sooner or later. At that moment, he also criticizes Sourface for acting brave, despite having fled when Garo was still at the dojo, which enrages the fighter. Sourface storms off, furious, promising that if he has to face him in the tournament, he will end Saitama's life. The narrative shifts to Metal Bat, who has finally managed to save the son of one of the association's high-ranking officials. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, a new monster appears, the Elder Centipede, who emerges to avenge its allies. It summons the monster Rafflesidon, responsible for releasing spores that put people to sleep. Faced with the threat, Metal Bat decides there will be no other option but to exterminate them. Meanwhile, Garo chooses his next target, Watchdog Man. He heard from the boy that he was an S-class hero, and even received a tip on where to find him. At that moment, a demon-level alert sounds. Garo sends the boy home and heads toward the location. Metal Bat then appears, exhausted after holding out for a long time against the enemies. He demands to know why they are after the family of that association member, and the monsters say that if he wins, they will explain. On the verge of losing consciousness due to the effect of Rafelsadon's spores, Metal Bat strikes himself in the head to stay awake. With renewed fury, he eliminates Rafelsadon and also the giant centipede, shattering them completely. But the situation is far from resolved. At Association headquarters, the directors are apprehensive, recalling that in the past, after the defeat of the small and giant centipedes, an even greater threat appeared that was capable of devastating entire cities. Soon, the Elder Centipede appears before Metal Bat and some heroes who have arrived as reinforcements. Recognizing the dragon-level danger, he asks his colleagues to take the high-ranking official and his son far away. However, the creature attacks them during their escape, and Metal Bat has to intervene. In the first impact, he cannot stop it, but he persists and with his wild tornado technique, strikes the centipede's face, managing to stop it for a few moments. At that point, Garo also arrives at the scene and immediately asks about Metal Bat, seeing him pass by gravely injured after the centipede's attack. He assumes the hero is no longer in any condition to fight, but is surprised when Metal Bat stands back up. Garo demands they fight right then and there, but Metal Bat refuses as he needs to deal with the centipede. Ignored, Garo launches a surprise attack, forcing the hero to focus on him, who now comes to recognize him as his true opponent. At the association, tension grows. The directors discuss how to deal with the Elder Centipede and check which S-class heroes can still provide backup to Metal Bat. It is then that Metal Knight arrives on the battlefield. The support heroes believe he has come to help, but Metal Knight quickly states that they are only getting in the way since they might be caught in the middle of his weapons tests. While Pineapple and Mohican try to flee, they end up being intercepted by a group of monsters. At the same time, at Association headquarters, the alarm sounds due to the appearance of several demon-level monsters spread across different cities, making it clear that the organization will not be able to handle so many simultaneous threats. At that moment, Garo begins to pummel Metal Bat, who, even in tatters and losing a great deal of blood, shows no intention of surrendering. Garo is surprised by such resilience, as the hero's body is practically destroyed, and questions whether that is simply hero pride. Metal Bat does not respond in words. He simply keeps trying to hit him, increasing the speed and force of his attacks with every moment. Garo realizes that with every blow he lands, his opponent's physical condition seems to improve, and he then deduces that this is due to his ability called Fighting Spirit. Curious, he asks the reason for this power, to which Metal Bat responds that it all depends on the spirit. The hero also warns that if Garo keeps hunting heroes, the giant centipede will eventually come after him too. Intrigued to see just how far his opponent's fighting spirit can go, Garo says he will have a little more fun and comes at Metal Bat with full force, who manages to block his attacks. While fighting, the hero declares that he will change the enemy's rotten mindset. Garo, laughing, mocks him, asking whether he intends to fight to the death. Metal Bat retorts that he will not fight to the death, but until he wins. In response, Garo states that he can easily repel any novice's technique, and then lands a devastating blow. With that, Garo emerges victorious and concludes that Metal Bat, like Tank Top Master, relies only on his muscles and therefore has no preparation whatsoever for facing martial arts against humans. However, he soon notices that his own hands are trembling and begins to wonder whether the force behind his opponent's bat was actually dangerous. He imagines that if he had been struck head-on, he would be in a critical situation. At that instant, Metal Bat is about to fight back, but holds himself back when he hears his sister's voice. Zenko appears to reprimand him, asking what he thinks he is doing, which breaks his concentration. Garo seizes the opening and goes in to finish him off, swearing that this time he will not hold back. However, Zenko intervenes once more, reminding her brother that he had promised not to fight in front of her, and the battle comes to an end. Garo questions why he would let a family rule interfere, but she insists it is over. At that moment, Garo remembers he has another commitment and decides to leave. As he walks away, he notices two monsters watching him from above. One of them tries to attack Zenko, and Garo moves to kill it, but notices that she managed to withstand the attack on her own. Shortly after, the monster's partner appears and hands Garo an invitation to join the Monster Association. He refuses without hesitation, saying he has no interest. Elsewhere, Pineapple and Mohican face a monster that considers them too weak. At the moment the villain is about to defeat them, it receives the order to stand down from Phoenix Man. He orders the monster to take the boy as a hostage, and then commands the Elder Centipede to stand down as well. However, Metal Knight, seeing the creature attempting to escape, grabs onto it to pursue it. The narrative shifts again, showing Heavy Kong and Lightning Genji in combat against other monsters. Saitama then hears Sourface calling him, asking him to hurry as the tournament is about to begin. Shortly after, the participants of the Super Fight tournament begin to be introduced one by one. When it is Saitama's turn, disguised as Charanko, he is booed by the entire crowd, except for Genos, who applauds him with enthusiasm. We also discover that Bakuzan of the Dark Hell Slaying Fist style is obsessed with defeating Suryu of the Void Shaking Water Shadow Fist, believing that only by doing so will he be recognized as the strongest of all fighting styles. Sueru clearly senses his rival's bloodlust, but even so laments having to face him, as his real goal in participating was to fight the previous tournament champion and have fun against powerful opponents. Meanwhile, Saitama talks to Sourface, visibly nervous when they are interrupted by Zakos. He accuses Saitama of looking down on martial arts and tells him to quit or he will be crushed without mercy. Saitama thinks the threat was directed at Sourface. Seeing that Zakos continues to mock Saitama, Sourface intervenes, asserting that he uses the flowing water crushing rock style. Zakos laughs at the declaration, thinking the level of Bang's dojo has plummeted. He then reveals that at first he was going to be a judge at the tournament, but gave it up. In his view, Bang is too obsessed with the life of a hero. This comment enrages Sourface, and he asks Saitama to defend the dojo's honor. But Saitama responds that it does not matter what Zakos says, as he is looking forward to facing him if he really intends to crush him. In the next scene, we see Bang and his brother Bomb resting as they continue their search for Garo. Suddenly, a monster appears and attacks them. Bang, seized by anger, asks his brother to stand aside as he will handle the situation himself. The monster begins to taunt him, but Bang calmly approaches and in a swift movement crushes it with his fists, eliminating it effortlessly before heading off again with Bomb. Shortly after, the tournament gets underway and the first fight is between Lightning Max and Ring Ring. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Butterfly DX spreads chaos, defeating several heroes with ease. In the same way, Martial Gorilla defeats Heavy Kong and demands that everyone spread the news of his victory. Lightning Genji also ends up being defeated, this time by Tiger-level villains. Association headquarters is on high alert as many heroes are being beaten by the various monsters emerging at different points in the city, which drastically reduces the available forces. The scene shifts again to Butterfly DX, who reveals her ability to turn into slaves all the heroes touched by her whip. When she was about to take down yet another opponent, she is interrupted by the Blizzard group. Fubuki faces her with disdain and says sarcastically that she does not see enough strength in her to justify a demon-level threat classification. Back at the tournament, we learn that Lightning Max managed to defeat Ring Ring. However, instead of being applauded, he is booed by the crowd, since the victory occurred in an unfavorable position, a situation created to pit a fighter against a rival who exploits his weaknesses. Sourface takes the moment to remind Saitama that he will also have to fight under those conditions, but the bald hero remains calm, even with the possibility of facing Bakuzan or Zakos. Shortly after, it is Saitama's turn against Zakos. The latter, confident, believes he will tear him apart, but the fight barely lasts a moment. Saitama knocks him down with a single blow, turning him into the laughingstock of the tournament. Then comes the match between Lightning Max and Suryu, who receives the crowd's full support. Despite this, Max does not believe Suryu is stronger than the Deep Sea King, whom he faced in the past, and apologizes before starting, explaining that he will use the fight to train his own techniques. Suryu, for his part, responds that his reasons for fighting are completely different, since he is not seeking to be a hero, but simply to become stronger in order to live without complications. The fight begins with Lightning Max going on the attack, but he ends up being defeated quickly by Suryu's powerful kicks. During the duel, Suryu reveals that his motivation is to train in order to live without a care in the world. In the stands, Genos follows everything closely and is surprised to see Suryu defeat an A-class hero with just one blow. The cyborg begins begins to reflect that there are far more civilians capable of surpassing heroes than he had imagined. Remembering Saitama, who became a hero purely out of hobby, Genos admits that there might be others like him, and although Suryu is not at his master's level, he believes he could put up a fight. Then we see Snek preparing to face Benpatsu, whose winner will have the chance to fight Suryu. Convinced that if he defeats Suryu, he will gain fame and influence, Snek enters with excitement. However, Benpatsu laughs at his opponent's confidence and goes on the attack. Meanwhile, a monster appears near the stadium. The tournament authorities discuss evacuation, but Bakuzan intervenes, saying that would only cause panic. He also states that it is not necessary since the venue is full of strong fighters and, should the monster appear there, it would be easily defeated. Genos, for his part, also receives information about the threat in City C and decides to investigate to ensure the tournament is not disrupted. Shortly after, we discover that Snek has emerged victorious from his fight against Benpatsu. In another scene, Genos has already eliminated the monster in City C and reports his position to headquarters. They inform him that in total, 5 monsters appeared and offer to guide him to the locations where they are spread out. Meanwhile, in the tournament, we see Volton, Gatling, Dave, and Chose secure their victories, opening the way for Sourface to face Jakumen, another newcomer. Sourface tries to stay calm, convinced that he is stronger than his rival, while Jakumen is intimidated by his opponent's expression alone. Back in Genos' action, he defeats another monster with ease, which surprises headquarters due to how quickly he has been finishing off each enemy. He then receives the location of the last one, the awakened cockroach, situated 2 kilometers to the northwest. Arriving there, the cyborg finds a survivor who warns him never to let the creature get behind him. The cockroach soon appears, asking Genos whether he hates insects. Determined, the hero's only thought is to end the fight quickly so he can watch Saitama's fight. At the tournament, we discover that Sourface managed to come out victorious from his bout, and now it is Saitama's turn to fight again. His opponent is Bakuzan, winner of 2 previous tournaments. Before they begin, Bakuzan tries to give a speech about the importance of the competition, but Saitama, distracted, is only trying to adjust his belt and pays no attention. This infuriates Bakuzan, who threatens to finish him off once and for all. However, as the fight begins, the fighter realizes that Saitama does not even assume a defensive stance. The protagonist simply asks him to show what kind of martial arts he has mastered. Bakuzan begins to explain in detail the blows he intends to use to kill him, but at the moment he touches the bald man's head, he awakens his fury. In response, Saitama delivers a punch that sends him flying, ending the fight in a brutal and immediate fashion. The scene shifts to Moiken, who begins to regain consciousness with help. He is quickly questioned about Waganma, the son of Narinki, an important financier of the association who is still missing. The concern is great, as Narinki single-handedly covers 7% of the budget, and losing his trust would be a heavy blow. For that reason, a suggestion arises that rescuing the boy should be the absolute top priority. They were about to notify all A-class and S-class heroes when news arrives that Metal Bat has been found unconscious. Meanwhile, Genos continues fighting. The cyborg loses an arm due to his opponent's incredible speed. It is not only fast, but also knows how to hide and move unpredictably. With no alternative, Genos activates the special function that Dr. Kuseno had recommended. He then releases an adhesive gel from his boots in an attempt to trap the enemy. With some frustration, he admits that he had intended to use this feature against Sonic, which in a way would have been an acknowledgement of the ninja's absurd speed. With the enemy trapped, he tries to incinerate it, but the monster panics, tears off its own feet, and flees. Before escaping, however, it notices something approaching at extremely high speed. The narrative turns to Fubeki, who is in serious trouble. Her group has been controlled by Butterfly DX. The villain threatens to turn her into yet another slave, but at that instant, Fubeki recalls Saitama's words and releases a tremendous surge of power, managing to hold on for some time. Even so, she ends up gravely wounded. Butterfly DX then reveals that she intends to use her as bait to draw out Tatsumaki. Fubeki, enraged, pushes past her own limits and manages to resist, ensuring that her sister will sense her condition and arrive soon. As predicted, Tatsumaki appears at the scene, ordering Fubeki to go home while she resolves everything with her psychic whirlwind. Seeing herself at a disadvantage, Butterfly DX orders her slaves to hold Tatsumaki so she can escape. At the tournament, Seiryu faces Snek. The hero reflects that his pride once drove him forward, but reality showed him that he cannot defeat every enemy, and worse, he discovered that there are civilians stronger than many heroes. This leads him to question whether heroes are truly necessary, since there will always be someone capable of defeating monsters. Seiryu makes it clear that he only cares about money. Intrigued, Snek asks why someone so powerful has no greater ideals. The answer is simple: pure talent, and he has not even trained for years. Seiryu also quips, asking why a hero as weak as Snek insists on fighting, since against powerful monsters he would make no difference. For him, the strong survive and the weak fall. That is the natural order. Incensed, Snek retorts that abandoning the weak is condemning them to death. The fight continues as the city suffers multiple attacks, and Seiryu concludes only the strongest will remain alive. Elsewhere, Monster King Orochi receives reports. He is informed that Goketsu has already defeated Genos, Metal Bat, and even Metal Knight, and is now heading to the stadium, which is packed with spectators. Gero assures that the Monster Association's victory is practically guaranteed, since the heroes are at a great disadvantage. Back at the tournament, Sourface tries to teach Saitama what true martial arts are, but ends up being thrown out of the ring with a single blow. Thus, Saitama advances to the group of 4 semi-finalists, alongside Tsuyu, Chose, and Volten. Later, already in the bathroom, he complains about the wig that is bothering him, when he is approached by Sourface, who thinks he is nervous. The hero admits he would also be nervous if he were in his position, as the fight between Volten and Tsuyu was impressive, and he believes Volten to be the dark horse of the tournament, warning him to be careful. Meanwhile, Garo crosses paths with Watchdog Man and is excited to finally have a direct match. At the same time, multiple monsters appear both in his area and at an Amai mass concert, increasing the tension at headquarters. Even so, the bespectacled director assures that the heroes are already in action. Drive Knight eliminates several enemies and captures one of them for interrogation, while elsewhere, Child Emperor faces monsters until he is discovered. In his moment of greatest risk, Pig God appears and says he came to help him. The boy worries upon seeing a venomous enemy, but is soon surprised to see the hero devour the monster eyesight without any major difficulty. The narrative returns to the tournament. Chose faces Saitama. Proud, Chose explains that he is the product of generations of selecting the best genes of his clan and considers himself the supreme creation. He intends to prove his superiority in the tournament and, in the future, conquer the world. Saitama, bored, comments that all of that is nothing more than an exaggeration, comparing him to the artificial selection of corn. Irritated, Chose barely finishes speaking when he is defeated by a single blow. Shortly after, City Q comes under attack. A-class heroes gather to act, but Flashy Flash stops them, saying they would only get in the way. He then demonstrates his own abilities, although this only increases the damage. At the height of the confusion, Tatsumaki suddenly appears and eliminates the monster with ease, reprimanding the heroes present, and especially Flashy Flash, ordering him to actually do his job since he belongs to S-Class. Meanwhile, Gyoro observes alongside Monster King Orochi how the S-Class heroes handle their battles. He comments that the way they fight is different, in the sense that they are more complicated to eliminate. Orochi, for his part, shows no concern. He simply states that he can create new monsters whenever he wants. The scene then takes us to Atomic Samurai, who gathers with the Council of Swordmaster to discuss the situation regarding Garo. Atomic Samurai suggests they capture the hero hunter before Bang does, as the master might show mercy toward his former student. Most of the Swordmasters agree to help, with the exception of Haragiri. He laughs at the others, declaring that all that truly matters is individual power. He then reveals that he possesses monster cells, capable of granting superhuman strength in exchange for the humanity of whoever consumes them. Haragiri confesses that he has accepted the Monster Association's proposal and has joined them to become more powerful. Before everyone present, he reveals his new monstrous form and threatens them, saying he could tear off their heads with a single draw of his sword. Atomic Samurai, however, despises him, calling him a fool, and defeats him with his blade in an instant. The moment of the grand tournament final then arrives. Shiryu takes the initiative and fires a sequence of attacks with his void-shaking tiger fist technique, strikes that stop in midair to release slashing blasts. Intrigued, Saitama watches, not understanding the purpose of his rival's moves. Shiryu comments that he recognizes his strength since he is also strong himself, and perceives that his eyes seek neither fame nor recognition, only fun. He then asks why Saitama entered the tournament. Shiryu himself admits he entered in search of the prize and opponents worthy of him, but that above all, the process is what he finds enjoyable. Saitama responds that he simply wanted to try out martial arts, having heard that they were extremely powerful. He complains, however, that if he counterattacks, the fight ends quickly. Shiryu does not understand the remark. The protagonist confesses that he had been thinking his participation was pointless, but now sees something different in his opponent. Excited, Shiryu proposes a deal. He will teach him martial arts in exchange for Saitama giving his all to entertain him. The agreement is accepted and the actual combat begins. Shiryu comes in with impressive speed and force, giving the impression that Saitama is at a disadvantage, but soon everyone can see that he has not suffered so much as a scratch. This makes Shiryu even more excited, and he insists that Saitama at least land one hit on him. When the hero is about to do so, he stops at the last instant, and Shiryu suspects he sensed a possible reaction. In the middle of the exchange, he asks Saitama about his daily routine, and the answer is simple: hunting monsters, since his dream is to be a hero. For Shiryu, that sounds pathetic. He despises heroes, believing they only seek recognition and praise for thinking themselves righteous, and concludes that no matter how hard they try, they will never save the world. For him, the essence of heroism is nothing but an impurity within the pursuit of a pleasurable life. These words irritate Saitama, who immediately blocks Shiryu's next attack and warns him he is not the only one who does what he wants. He then advises his rival not to keep seeking greater strength if he wishes to keep enjoying himself. Shiryu insists, tries one more blow, and at that moment Saitama notices that his wig has fallen off. The judges interrupt the fight and disqualify him for violating the rules, which causes indignation and booing from the crowd. Snek, among the spectators, wonders what Saitama was even doing there. The protagonist, trying to step away from the commotion, is held back by Shiryu, who insists that now the fight would finally get truly interesting. He comes in with all his energy, even destroying the ring itself, but no matter how he varies his attacks, none of them hit Saitama. The hero then comments that he has already figured out the secret of martial arts. It is all about making flashy movements. He also jokes that it would be cool to face monsters using that spinning style. Irritated, Shiryu goes in for one last attack, only to be defeated by a simple hip check from Saitama. The protagonist, realizing the situation, needs to quickly leave the area. After all of that, Shiryu receives the prize for having won the tournament title. Shortly after, the announcer informs the crowd that monsters have been spotted outside the stadium, but reassures everyone that as long as they stay inside, they will be safe. However, the situation suddenly changes when enormous birds appear carrying Rosie, Dave, and Bazuzu as prisoners. Shortly after, a gigantic monster called Goketsu appears, blocking any attempt to escape. He explains that he is after the tournament participants and orders them to transform into monsters, promising that in doing so they will become more powerful, regardless of who they are. The A-class heroes oppose the idea and step forward to face him. Goketsu, however, barely bothers. He delivers a single kick and sends them flying out of the stadium. He then introduces himself to the remaining participants, shocking everyone by revealing that he was once the champion of the very first Super Fight tournament. Faced with general disbelief, the announcer questions how he could still be alive after having been defeated by a monster in the past. The giant explains that after losing, he was taken to the Monster Association's lair, where he was offered the chance to fulfill his ambitions. Accepting to give up his humanity, he obtained a power that far surpassed human limits. He now demands that everyone devour the monster cells, warning that those who refuse will be eliminated. Meanwhile, in another scene, Metal Knight questions Giro about the Monster Association's true objectives. The creature responds that beyond violence, they seek to take the next step in evolution Back at the ring, Rosie is the first to give in. He consumes a monster cell and undergoes a transformation, feeling a wave of violent strength and freedom. His first act is to try to take revenge on Dave, but before he can go any further, Chose eliminates him. Then, driven by ambition, Chose also consumes a cell. Transformed, he declares himself in peak physical and mental form, and soon demonstrates his new power by knocking down Jakumen with just one blow. Proud of his evolution, he thinks about finally getting revenge on the man who humiliated him in the earlier fight. Impressed with the results, Goketsu encourages the others to hurry up and do the same. Under pressure and threats, Benpatsu, Hamukichi, and Volton eventually give in and ingest the cells, shocking the other fighters. Seeing this, Suryu decides to act. He defeats Benpatsu, Hamukichi, and Volton in sequence. He then faces Chose, who holds up much better, providing an intense and exciting fight. Chose, consumed by the delusion of his new power, reveals that he desires to create a world only for those who pass his selection. Even with all that power, he is no match. Suryu blocks his devastating attack, protects the innocent, breaks his horns, and in the end uses his special technique to defeat him. At that moment, Goketsu intervenes again. He gives Suru one last chance to switch sides, promising that in the future world ruled by monsters there would be nothing but blood, violence, and fun, exactly what Suru sought. The champion, however, refuses without hesitation and goes to attack him directly in the face. In response, Goketsu declares that in that case he will have to die. The following blow is brutal. The giant strikes him with such force that Suru begins to bleed. The narrative then takes us to another location. We see Watchdog Man receiving applause from the crowd after defeating multiple monsters. Garo, observing from a distance, is far from satisfied and decides to face him. However, as soon as he goes in for the attack, he discovers that Watchdog Man is no simple opponent, getting hit by him immediately. Back to Goketsu. The battle against Suryu continues. Despite the fighter trying to strike him multiple times, the monster remains untouched, which increases Suryu's concern. At that instant, Goketsu's subordinates begin attacking the crowd, and he takes advantage of the moment to deliver a new strike, breaking the champion's bones and crushing him with his own weight. Even injured, Suryu manages to escape and counter with the void-shaking Tiger Fist, but the blow is easily neutralized by Goketsu's overwhelming strength. The monster demonstrates his total superiority, humiliating Suryu with brutal attacks, and finally hands him over to his disciples to be devoured. When he realizes there is no way out, Suryu pleads with Bakuzan for help. Bakuzan, for his part, admits that Suryu truly was stronger when he defeated him earlier, but now that he sees him about to die, concludes that no matter how high a human climbs, they will always be weaker than a monster. For that reason, he reveals that he decided to ingest a monster cell, believing that this will allow him to finish him off once and for all. Without hesitating, Bakuzan swallows all the available cells and, consumed by arrogance, first threatens Suryu and then even Gyoketsu himself, declaring that he will face him next. However, his body cannot withstand the transformation and fails miserably. Goketsu watches the scene with contempt and tells Suryu that he can now despair in peace, since everyone else has been killed or fled. Suryu, without hope, believes everything is over, but is surprised when some A-class heroes return to help him. He does not understand why they have come back, and they simply reply that they came to rescue him. Snek proudly shows off his new reinforced outfit, built to withstand more punishment, while Lightning Max presents his lightning shoes, designed to increase his speed. The heroes ask Suryu to take care of one of the giant birds so they can face the other monsters individually. To Goketsu's surprise, the heroes end up defeating his servants with ease. Suryu, after eliminating the bird assigned to him, suggests that everyone take the opportunity to flee. However, they make it clear that they do not intend to run, as they want to face him to secure a chance to escape. Suryu warns them that they are being foolish, since not even two of them together compare to his strength, and that fighting would be suicide. Seized by fear, he himself tries to flee, but is intercepted by Bakuzan, now transformed, who amuses himself by punishing him. Seeing him, Goketsu is excited, recognizing a dragon-level threat in him, much like himself. Bakuzan, deranged, begins to strike Suryu without stopping, laughing with every blow. The narrative then shifts to Gyoro Gyoro, who informs Orochi that the first phase of the plan has been completed, as the humans are now gripped by fear. He also reveals that the second objective, kidnapping someone valuable to the Hero Association, was a success, and he adds that the third phase also worked. Nyan turned criminals into monsters, and Goketsu did the same with the martial artists. With that, he asks Goketsu to return to the base before S-class heroes show up. The monster agrees and, despite Bakuzan's insolence, tries to bring him along. After easily subduing him, he explains that there are many monsters even stronger, and that he should not let it go to his head. Goketsu forces nothing, leaving the choice: either join them or face the S-class heroes alone. Before leaving, he reveals that the Monster Association's base is in the abandoned zone of City Z. With Goketsu gone, Bakuzan turns his attention back to Suiro, who begs for his life. The monster decides to prolong his suffering, strikes him multiple times, and makes a point of watching him scream. About to finish him off, Suiro desperately cries out for a hero to come save him. Realizing no one appears, he feels that death is inevitable and tries to cling to any last shred of hope. Bakuzan laughs at his despair and, just as he is about to crush him for good, is caught off guard by someone's arrival. Saitama appears at the scene, praises Suyu for having held on until now, and asks him to relax since from here on he will take care of everything. Bakuzan, upon seeing him, bursts out laughing, believing that bald man has not the slightest chance. Soon, however, he recognizes him as one of the tournament participants and starts screaming in terror. Saitama, not recognizing him, simply stares him down while Bakuzan announces his secret techniques of the Dark Hell Slaying Fist. The monster delivers multiple attacks, but none have any effect whatsoever. Saitama does not even bother to defend himself. Confused, the bald hero continues, not quite knowing who his opponent is, until, tired of the situation, he delivers a blow that tears apart half of Bakuzan's body. With the monster defeated, Saitama apologizes to Suryu for everything he went through. The young man thanks him emotionally and asks who he really is. Saitama simply says his name and tells him he is a hero. Suryu then asks why he used another name in the tournament. The protagonist explains that it was out of curiosity, since there was a hero hunter who specialized in martial arts, and he wanted to give it a try, also taking advantage of the fact that he had come across an entrance ticket by chance, and on top of that he was bored. Surprised by the answer, Suryu mentions the Monster Association and warns that leaving is dangerous since Goketsu is still on the loose. When Saitama asks who this monster is supposed to be, Suryu explains that compared to him, Bakuzan seemed like a child. Without making much of it, Saitama only asks where Goketsu went and heads off in that direction. Suryu tries to stop him, saying it will be suicide to face him, but the hero ignores him and keeps walking. Using his last remaining strength, Suryu tries to hold him back, but Saitama simply shakes him off and continues forward. Exhausted, the young man laments not having been able to stop him and believes Saitama will be killed. But soon, to his astonishment, he sees Goketsu's head drop in front of him. The bald man simply asks that Suryu not tell anyone what he did at the tournament. Astonished, Suryu asks whether the monster seems strong, and Saitama replies that he does not know, as he defeated it with a single blow. Shortly after, the young man confesses that he is thinking of becoming a hero to overcome his fears, and wonders whether that is possible. Saitama replies that he does not know, but believes it is, since feeling fear at the beginning is normal. Reassured, Suryu asks whether he can become his disciple. The hero simply laughs and says he would never accept anything like that. In the middle of all this, Puri Prisoner is desperately trying to formulate a plan to get rid of the creature known as the Free Hugger monster. With no brilliant ideas, some young people on a rooftop suggest he use the ball on his chain to strike the monster's leg. However, the pretty boy has a different insight. He decides to accept the love, so he approaches the monster and wraps it in his angel hug, using his entire body to definitively put an end to the threat. Shortly after, he is informed that his prison companions have been taken, which leaves him visibly concerned. The narrative then shifts to Saitama, who is searching for information about the whereabouts of the disappeared monsters. While walking home, he questions himself about how he could have missed an event of such magnitude. He begins to wonder that if he cannot beat the monsters, perhaps he should no longer consider himself a hero. However, he quickly remembers that his motivation was never to be a hero. He started out of personal interest, and now the association bores him. The appearance of the hero hunter rekindled his curiosity, which led him to enter the tournament. Saitama feels a growing frustration over the fact that no competitor or monster has made him feel anything at all. His daydreaming is abruptly interrupted by King, who asks the reason for his sour expression and advises him not to get discouraged, reminding him that he is still young. King, thinking that Saitama's sadness has something to do with his lack of hair, is cut off. Saitama, with genuine concern, admits that his problem is that he may no longer be able to evolve, since he is already too powerful. This means he feels nothing when fighting, which prevents him from learning from his opponents. His absolute strength has become a burden. King, however, sees this as something positive and explains that if Saitama cannot improve, he also cannot appreciate his own growth. He comments that even if Saitama destroys 1,000 monsters, deep down he will continue to be profoundly bored. He laments how lonely the life of a hero is. Understanding his friend's feeling, King suggests that Saitama take dance classes to make friends, but Saitama rejects the idea, saying he does not even have any interest in having friends. King then suggests he travel, which the protagonist also refuses. King gets irritated and reprimands him, saying he complains about boredom but makes no effort to change the situation. He then confesses to having gone through the same experience and tells Saitama that in order to see new horizons, one must open new paths. He takes the opportunity to correct Saitama, saying he is wrong if he thinks becoming strong is the ultimate goal. A hero's aim cannot be something so simplistic. Saitama counters by saying that King has no experience to talk, but King insists that seeking satisfaction in combat is a mistake. The true reason for being a hero is finding the courage to act for others. With seriousness, he states that Saitama has not yet reached the pinnacle of heroism and that he has a long road ahead. Saitama agrees, finding the idea brilliant, and decides he needs to think about what the ideal strongest hero would look like. Suddenly, he finds the idea boring again. King then invites him to play video games, which the protagonist initially refuses. However, after some taunting and challenges, King finally manages to convince Saitama. The setting shifts again, revealing Garo gravely injured after his confrontation with Watchdog Man. Garo thinks he was lucky to escape, since human martial arts were no match for something that moves on all fours. However, the fight moved him, as he discovered he can still become much stronger. Suddenly, he spots King approaching. Fueled by his excitement, he channels his strength and prepares to attack the hero. At the moment of the attack, King is startled, and Saitama, with a single kick, sends him flying. The two heroes look at each other, confused about who attacked them. While they continue walking, ignoring what happened, Saitama confesses to his friend that the hero hunter has intrigued him, as it is the first time a human has called himself a monster, and he hopes this opponent will be very strong. In the final scene, Speedo Sound Sonic is ambushed by two individuals and in response plans to eliminate them. However, they stop him, assuring him they have no intention of attacking, and introduce themselves as Hellfire and Gale, members of a newly formed monster association. They have come to recruit him to achieve great things, as their goal is to dominate the world. They reveal that they need his help to kill Flashy Flash. Sonic declines immediately, claiming he has no time and is not obligated to help them. Faced with the refusal, the duo assumes their monstrous forms to demonstrate their power, displaying a supersonic ninja speed that, according to them, surpasses any drug or modification. Surprised, Sonic receives the offer of a monster cell to ingest. They inform him that if he changes his mind, they will be waiting at the Monster Association. Later, Sonic reflects that to defeat Saitama, he needs to abandon his humanity. He feels that he died the moment he was defeated, and human life no longer means anything to him whatsoever. Meanwhile, Headquarters is in an uproar because of Marshal Gorilla, who vowed to kill heroes until his threat level is changed. The options being discussed are to send more heroes or set up a siege. Suddenly, they are interrupted by Zombieman, who offers to resolve the problem alone. He goes out to locate the enemy, finding another gorilla who reprimands him for having let himself be manipulated by humans. When Zombieman tries to attack, the gorilla hits him and tells him to go pick a fight somewhere else. Shortly after, the Hero Association's leadership finally obtains information about their adversary, a monster association led by Monster King Orochi, hiding in the ghost town of City Z. After deliberations, they conclude that the monsters are staging a show of force, perhaps having kidnapped someone to use for negotiations. Suddenly, another agent arrives with a message from the Monster Association, but in the middle of the transmission, the agent himself begins to transform into a monster. A parasite has invaded his body. Some of the high-ranking members are terrified, realizing they need to call in the heroes. One of the directors arms himself, ready to fire but is restrained, since the message must be heard first. The parasite, introducing itself as Gyoro, the Monster Association's counselor, takes the floor. It reveals that it holds the son of one of the directors hostage, and then lays out its demands. It wants the oppression of monsters to end, arguing that they hide in the ruins of City Z and support one another. It insists that they should not be prevented from taking territories, attacking civilians, or intruding in their human lives. With apparent lament, it states that all they are asking for is a safe zone for monsters. When questioned about the reason for the initial attack, Gyoro says it was to demonstrate their power, confessing that this way the proposal would seem mutually beneficial, since it is best to avoid further casualties. One of the directors agrees to accept the truce. However, while asking for the hostages' release, he privately thinks that the peace will be short-lived, as the monsters must be annihilated before they grow stronger. Suddenly, that director is struck by a shot fired by the other infected agent. The attack leads the leadership to question whether Gyoro ever truly intended to negotiate, to which it bursts out laughing. It declares that it was all a joke and warns that within 3 days, their best heroes must be sent to rescue the hostage, as the Monster Association of Lord Orochi will be waiting. After the parasite departs, the other infected one thinks about attacking those present purely for fun, but is easily stopped by Super Alloy Darkshine, who questions whether that is all the challenge it has. One of the directors warns him about the parasite, which in turn thinks about taking over the body of an S-class hero. When the parasite attempts to pierce the hero's skin, it discovers it is too hard, thanks to his Super Alloy skin, and ends up being crushed. Super Alloy Darkshine, for his part, is left bewildered by what he hears from the directors, and thinks the situation is far from calm, given the intimidation the association's leaders clearly feel. The scene shifts to a gathering of monsters, who debate whether the heroes will come, given that they have demonstrated themselves to be far more powerful. However, Gyoro calms them down, reminding them that the Hero Association has its own wild animals, and that if they were allowed to escape, they would cause problems later. The plan is to gather them all together and crush them in one fell swoop. It explains that by defeating the best fighters, the Hero Association can be eradicated without resistance, and consequently humanity will fall without being able to do anything, making Lord Orochi the king of the new world. Gero, upon finishing the speech, gets irritated at not being met with applause and asks whether they do not wish to serve Orochi. One of the monsters responds that it joined to kill heroes, not to serve anyone. Orochi quickly locates and captures the monster, asking what a loser is doing there. The monster pleads for its life, but is devoured by Orochi. Gero then informs everyone that whoever has a problem may challenge Orochi afterward, as whoever defeats him will become the next leader. Upon hearing this, everyone agrees. With the matter settled, Orochi asks Gyoro about Goketsu, since he is not present. Gyoro notices the absence and decides to go investigate, finding only the monster's decapitated body. It is shocked, thinking this was impossible, and wonders who could have defeated him. The narrative moves to Garo, who does not know what happened, but upon remembering his previous defeat, begins the journey back to his hideout. Next, we see Genos, who sought out Dr. Kusono for repairs. The doctor has also decided to incorporate some improvements to increase his speed, for which Genos is grateful. The doctor advises him to approach the battle with calmness, assuring him that as long as he comes back alive, it is alright to lose. He confesses that Genos' arrival reminded him of his own youth, when he fought for justice, advancing fearlessly into anything, and recommends that he not do anything reckless. The scene changes, and the news about the existence of the Monster Association and the imminent war has already spread. Heroes injured in the hospital are frustrated at not being able to participate. Elsewhere, Child Emperor questions Metal Knight about his refusal to take part in the war, but Metal Knight justifies himself, saying that giving in to provocation would only cause more casualties and would be a waste of strength. However, Metal Knight proposes that if the monster's hideout is found, the location should be bombed, ignoring the hostage. Since the association refuses, he states that this is the reason for his non-participation in the operation. For their part, the association's leaders are worried about the news leaking, which leads them to agree that they must present themselves as being as strong as possible. Finally, we see that all the monsters who found out about the news decided to seek out the Monster Association to join up. But before they could get there, they ran into Saitama, who finished all of them off. The scene shifts and we find Garo gravely injured, estimating that he will not be able to move for 2 or 3 days. Unexpectedly, Tareo, the boy with the hero guidebook, finds him in his hideout. Garo recognizes him, and vice versa. The boy then asks him to leave the cabin, as that was the order he was given. The hero hunter assures him he will be gone in a few days, but if Tareo's friends have any objections, he expects them to come tell him in person. He then lets him in on a secret so he will not be bothered further. Meanwhile, Tareo's friends are worried about his prolonged disappearance. Suddenly, Death Gatling and other heroes arrive at the location, as they knew of Garo's presence in the cabin. Inside, Garo, after giving the boy his advice, asks to see the hero book in exchange. Upon receiving it, he quickly prepares to identify his opponents, discovering that there are 8 heroes. He flips through the book at full speed, as he can already hear Death Gatling's shots. He swiftly sends the boy to hide, then rushes out and implores the heroes not to shoot at the cabin. Death Gatling, noticing his weakness, demands he provide information about his companions. Garo thanks the heroes for their consideration, but shortly after promises to make them pay for calling themselves heroes. Garo climbs on top of the cabin and launches his attack, targeting Gun first and, thanks to reading the book, dodging Shooter's arrows. However, the heroes do not retreat and return to the attack, combining their blows. Garo dodges the attacks with exceptional mastery until he is hit by a poisoned arrow from glasses. He decides to attack who he believes to be the group's support in order to use him as a shield. Upon trying, he realizes it is not as easy as he imagined and finds himself surrounded again. Then, Death Gatling laments his situation, for he is surrounded by the most valiant heroes. Garo laughs at the claim that he has gathered the best of them and mocks them, questioning why there is no S-class hero present. Death Gatling is furious because just like the Hero Association, he believes they are special. He complains that because of the ranking, many heroes are not properly recognized. Death Gatling reveals that there are many more skilled heroes outside of S-class, and now they will defeat him, as he is the perfect target to prove that he is right. When Garo tries to mock them further, he feels very dizzy and has difficulty breathing. He then questions them on whether they should not stop wasting time and hunt down the Monster Association members instead. Death Gatling responds that they are next, and that now they will finish him off. Upon hearing this, Garo thinks that the heroes are simply a ladder he needs to climb in order to become a monster. The fight resumes, and even poisoned, Garo promises to give his all to climb that ladder. He begins to use the heroes' strength against themselves, taking advantage of their force and his own intelligence, and to everyone's surprise, begins to defeat them one by one, eliminating half the group. Smileman, seeing what is happening, tells Death Gatling that it will not be funny if Garo annihilates them, and asks for permission to kill, which is granted since that was the decision Garo himself made. But when they believe they can do it, Garo demonstrates that he still has strength left and challenges Sting to a one-on-one fight using his giant drill stinger. Sting accepts the challenge and asks the rest not to interfere, but they refuse. Suddenly, Garo manages to finish off Smileman, mocking Sting for falling into the trap. Now, Death Gatling orders him to step back, as he himself will deal with Garo, since he cannot dodge his shots. However, Garo manages to escape and grabs the hero glasses to use as a shield, so Death Gatling will not fire. While trying to escape, Garo attacks him with multiple punches, causing him to remember that he was always treated as a nuisance until the day he met Saitama, who advised him to overcome his frustrations in order to break past his own limits. He reveals that since that day he has set himself to be like the protagonist, which is why he does not want to be a simple shield. He plans to fight head-on, but Garo, seeing his desire to fight, strikes him repeatedly in the face. Sting, for his part, seeing his friend in danger, decides to finish off Garo, despite Death Gatling's warning that it was a trap. Garo, seeing him approach, takes advantage of the moment to beat down Sting and then finish off Glasses. However, Death Gatling positions himself behind him and says that he got rid of his own shield. When he was about to fire, Garo stops him, warning that there is a boy inside the cabin and that if he fires from that position, he will hurt him. Death Gatling does not believe a word of what he says. Faced with this, Garo is furious and shouts for the boy to watch carefully as a monster's moment of victory unfolds. Then, Death Gatling fires his death rain until all his bullets are spent, realizing he did not land a single shot. Garo, upon realizing this, begins to taunt him, saying he should have called in S-class heroes. But Death Gatling gets irritated and tells him to look closely, for that is the A-class hero who cornered the hero hunter. He then launches himself at Garo, trying to take his life, and lands just one punch that knocks him unconscious. Garo, believing everything was over after that last attack, gathers his remaining strength to try to flee. Suddenly, Genos appears at the scene, having been alerted by glasses before he passed out. The cyborg attacks Garo directly, requiring the hero hunter to give his maximum effort just to dodge each blow. After an intense fight, Garo realizes he has been on the brink of death and decides it is time to fight seriously. The scene changes and we see Saitama and King playing video games until they are interrupted by King's alert device. Saitama advises him to go deal with the monster, but King responds that another hero already took care of it. During the conversation, King remembers Genos and asks Saitama what he knows about him. Saitama says he has not seen him since the previous day, which greatly worries King, who fears Genos may have been defeated by monsters. Saitama states that Genos must be fine, but after pondering for a moment, grows concerned and decides to go look for him. We return to the fight between Genos and Garo, who insists they are in no condition to keep fighting. Genos, seeing him try to flee, demands that he surrender as he has no chance of winning. However, Garo decides to use Watchdog Man's animal fighting style moves and manages to tear off one of the cyborg's arms. Surprisingly, the arm begins to move on its own and pins Garo down, who mocks the situation, saying he is happy to be so popular. Genos, for his part, talks about the Monster Association and confesses that the heroes should unite, which is why they cannot waste time on nobodies like him. Garo is enraged at being called a nobody and frees himself from Genos' trap. The hero hunter transforms and asks Genos to let everyone know that the hero hunter no hero can beat is right there. When Genos ignores him, confident in his victory, he is attacked from behind. Next, we see that Monster Association members have arrived to support Garo. They inform him that the bosses have invited him to accept a position, which he refuses, telling them to get lost. Meanwhile, Genos frees himself from the monsters and finishes off the one who extended the invitation to Garo, concluding that his enemy is also connected to the Monster Association. After mentioning the teachings of his master Saitama, he prepares to incinerate him with his cannon, but before he can do so, Bang appears at the scene and strikes Garo, pushing him away. Bang asks Genos for permission to resolve the situation with his brother Bomb. Upon hearing Bang's voice, Garo laments the arrival of the old man who can give him the most trouble, and despite being gravely injured, prepares to fight him. However, Bang simply gives him a monumental beating, from which Garo refuses to yield. Genos watches the entire fight and is impressed by the perfection with which they attack and defend. During the fight, Garo, upon being struck, thinks that this is not normal and that Bang is attacking without holding back, believing he is going to die. He creates an opening to escape using Watchdog Man's moves, but when he thinks about using Death Gatling as a shield to flee, Bomb stops him with a kick. The scene changes and Phoenix Man is withdrawing from the area, as he had sent many monsters to capture Garo alive. However, he did not expect Genos to be so strong and to finish them all off, taking advantage of Bang and Bomb's arrival. Now he is worried, thinking he cannot return empty-handed or he might be devoured, and prays that Garo manages to escape on his own. Next, we return to Bang, who is surprised that Garo can still get up, even in his injured state. Bomb comments that he is at his limit and suggests they attack. Garo, seeing the two old men taking advantage of his condition, questions whether they feel no shame in cornering him that way. He concludes that even if he begs for his life, the demonic cyborg will not let him escape, and the only way out is to kill all three of them, which is impossible. The scene transforms into a memory of Garo, where he played with other children who were pretending to be heroes. When he warned them of danger, they insisted he be the monster. Garo, as he sees his life flash before him, recalls how other children would bully him, which led him to the principal's office, where he was reprimanded for not being able to distinguish the game from reality. Even when he tried to explain his reasons, he was always treated as the monster. Although he did not mind being the monster, what bothered him was the injustice of the world. Because when imitating what he saw on TV, being the least popular, he could never aspire to be the hero. One day, the children decided to beat him up for not following the rules of the popular boy. Since the monster never wins, someone popular always defeats someone weak and hated. Garo reveals that he grew tired of it and decided to confront the other boy, as he no longer wanted to be the monster. He challenged him to a fight, and if he won, the other would have to promise not to bother him anymore. However, the boy ordered the others to hold him down and began to beat him. The worst part was that everyone defended him before the adults, and the only one punished was Garo. Since that day, he has questioned what is justice and what is evil, since in the end he was always massacred by the majority. Garo confesses to feeling deeply angry, as he only wants to be understood, to have people experience the impact of a weak person's blow, and to have the notions of good and evil be denied. We then witness Garo manifesting a new power that allows him to skillfully defend himself against the blows of the dragon-slaying Fang Crossfist. Phoenix Man takes advantage of the confusion and the element of surprise to snatch Garo away from there. However, Genos quickly aims at the kidnapper and fires his cannon. Suddenly, the fight is interrupted by the appearance of the Elder Centipede, which Phoenix Man had summoned for his protection. The heroes are therefore forced to abandon the previous confrontation to save their companion from annihilation by the centipede. In the next scene, Garo complains to Phoenix Man for interfering. Phoenix Man tries to reassure him, saying that the Elder Centipede will take care of everything, and reprimands Garo for not killing the heroes, but assures him that his ally will finish the job. Garo gets irritated and demands to be let go, claiming they are stealing his prey. Phoenix Man asks Garo to calm down, as eliminating 2 S-class heroes will be advantageous for them. He reveals that according to Gyoro, only certain individuals would be capable of facing the Elder Centipede. Gyoro believes that only Tatsumaki, Metal Knight, King, and Blast are a match for the monster, and that the 2 S-class heroes in front of them will be completely annihilated. Meanwhile, the Elder Centipede advances toward the heroes, who awaited in a defensive formation. Genos attacks, but is ineffective. Bang and Bomb attempt to damage it with their special combined attack, the dragon-slaying Fang Cross Fist. Although the technique is incredibly powerful and impresses even Genos, it only manages to break part of the centipede's shell. They begin to repeat the attack along the enemy's body, which grows irritated and counterattacks, forcing Genos to save the 2 brothers. Bomb informs the cyborg that his attack will travel through the monster's body, hoping it will explode in pieces. However, the centipede demonstrates the ability to reconstitute its body, revealing that they had only destroyed its outer skin. Faced with the situation, Genos informs Bang that he will face the monster alone. Bang refuses, realizing the cyborg only wants to buy time for them to escape. Even with the brothers' warnings not to do anything reckless, Genos decides to leap onto the monster. He attacks it with his cannons, reflecting that he cannot avoid this kind of combat against powerful opponents. Genos leaps toward the centipede's face and delivers repeated merciless blows, but is suddenly captured. The monster takes the opportunity to inflict massive damage on his body, splitting him in 2. To everyone's surprise, Genos demonstrates that he can reattach his parts and attacks with a powerful blow that sends him into the monster's mouth. Inside the centipede, Genos decides to use his super spiral incineration cannon attack, inflicting internal damage on the monster, which expels him to the outside. Despite having given everything he had, the centipede is still alive, which frustrates the cyborg, as he cannot win alone. Bang, seeing the situation, tells his brother it is time to run. Just when they thought the monster was about to reach the urban area, Bang warns Bomb that it is time to deliver their final attack. But suddenly, King draws the centipede's attention, saying he brought Blast, who had defeated it before. While insulting it, trembling with fear, King demands that the monster follow him to where Blast is. The Elder Centipede, upon hearing this, is enraged and advances directly to devour him. However, before it can do so, Saitama appears and delivers a serious punch to the monster's face, completely disintegrating it. Afterward, we see Genos ask Saitama what he thinks he is lacking to become stronger. Saitama, without hesitating, answers power, and Genos thanks him for the advice. King is surprised to see that the cyborg takes Saitama as a role model, since he is not a very good example to follow. However, Genos believes that his path is the one Saitama shows, and for that reason intends to follow him wherever he goes. Finally, we discover that Phoenix Man managed to escape together with Garo to bring him before Orochi. This was the summary of One Punch Man. I hope you enjoyed the video. This video took a lot of work to summarize, record, and edit, but One Punch Man is an extremely fun anime. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as we are focused on summaries. There are 2 more videos on the screen. I'll see you there.